Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if issei was broken by all and met Koruka and Mary? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the xDoug-Dimmadome-x for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. A little boy about 12 was on his knees, unconscious and bound in chains to the wall and floor. He was wearing raggy clothes, just torn blue jeans that were obviously from the trash. He also wore a simple gray t-shirt, just soaked in dirt and grime. It was obvious the clothes were from the trash. He had a large gash under his right eye that went down towards the middle of his. It was a scar now, but it was obviously a knife wound. He was so skinny, it was obvious he wasn't eating very much. There was food placed before him, but they were from the morning before, as the boy seemed to refuse to eat. His wrists and ankles were chafed and raw, as he was obviously in chains for a very long time. He had short, spiky and dirty brown hair. If he opened his eyes, you would see he had chocolate brown eyes as well, matching the color of his hair. The room he was in was little more than a jail cell, only a cot which looked unused and a toilet with a sink. There was soap, of course, and there was a toothbrush and toothpaste, though by the looks of it, the boy gave up on personal hygiene a long time ago. There was a metal door which had 2 slots on it. One up top for people to look in and for him to look out, and a slot near the bottom where the food was slid in or other items. There was no windows, so there was no indication what time of day it was. It was a large metal door opened up with no sound at all, obviously well oiled. As the bright light from the hallway shined in, the little boy opened his eyes and looked up, his expression full of defeat. He was just broken down into nothing, unable to do anything but lay there. He watched as a large man walked into the room and removed his chains before yanking the boy to his feet, picking him up roughly over his shoulders and carrying him off. A few minutes later, they arrived in a large shower room, like a locker room. After being brutally shoved into the wall with a resounding thump, the boy was immediately hit with a large blast of water from a hose. The boy was stripped of his clothes prior to this, of course. "Get behind his ears!" yelped a female, who was giggling with sadistic glee. "Wanna do the honors, Ratch?" the big man said with a smile. "Sounds like fun! Let me give this boy a nice wash down. Be careful, this boy's stench might knock you out." "Ha ha! I thought you were going to say something like this hose would be too much for me to handle." "You've handled bigger hoses than this one, babe." "Yeah, your brother." "Ouch. That's hurtful." "Hee hee." The woman giggled out, washing the boy with the hose. The boy was crouched in the corner, cowering from the hose's powerful jets of water. It stung greatly on his beaten body. After the shower, the boy was dragged back to his cell, where he was tossed inside by the man before having his hair pulled and having his face look up at the man. The man was a massive hulk of a man, muscles bulging. He was a Russian and looked at the boy with cold eyes. "Issei, you can act like you are just a broken toy and nothing less, but I will mold you into what my client desires here very soon. Just you wait. She tasked me with finding the most suitable boy for the job. She likes the young ones so much. So, I found you, and I have taken great in beating that defiance you had out of you. Your parents made you strong, but you are truly just a weak little boy. Pathetic. Now you should eat, you will need your strength for tonight, ha 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 ha." The Russian laughed as he walked out of the room, leaving the boy on the cold hard ground, not even snapping him into the chains. The boy was so weak-willed and broken he would just lay on the cold dirty ground. Issei Hayadu. He was taken from his loving home at the age of 7 and shoved into the life of debauchery and brutality. He was being cultivated to be in the slave trade. Supposedly a female was into the younger boys, in their early teens, 13 to 14, so he was sought out. He was chosen because of his father. His father was a hunk of a man, a model in the Japanese fashion industry, and was a male stripper in his younger years. Due to this, they took Issei an assumption he had his father's genes in good-lookingness. This was what he was told, at least. The kidnapping took place in the middle of the night on Issei's birthday, in the wee morning. His father was quick to get the shotgun but was quickly brought down with a gunshot to the head. Issei's mother screamed at the sight, but she was hit in the head with the bottom of a gun, knocking her out and sending her into the hospital. Issei was only 7 and was easily captured from his bed in the middle of the night. He screamed and cried until he was also knocked out with a gun and taken into a black unmarked van. The kidnapping only took 10 minutes and they were out 20 minutes before the police even arrived from a call from a neighbor. The father died instantly from the gunshot though. Issei was beaten by the older man, every day for 2 years. He was defiant for a year, but it took a year to completely break the boy into nothing. After that, the beatings slowed down but never stopped. The man took great in beating up a helpless child. There were many females in the operation and they were just as cruel as the men, if not crueler, taking part in the savagery. One female gave him the nasty scar under his eye, just because Issei wouldn't give her a kiss on the for being such a good mommy. The knife was shoved into his skin and muscle right under his eye. He screamed and cried for mercy, but the woman just snarled and tore it down his face, until she hit his lower jaw and she removed the blade. She forced his lips to her, making Issei kiss her as his blood and tears mixed on her own and on the ground. Issei was treated like he was just some toy for them to play with, which for what they were doing he was only a toy. There was actually very few men in the operation, only the large muscle man, the doctor, and the chef. 3 men and plenty of women. They were all good-looking females too, yet they were mean. Issei was not touched though by the women, yet he knew everything there was to know about. He was forced to endure the painfully accurate classes that taught him how to behave for his mistress. He was whipped weekly and his body looked like a tic-tac-toe board after 3 years of it. His back was bloody and pulpy after the whipping that the body could never truly heal and his body was just badly scarred. His bones were broken constantly and he was still beaten with broken bones. There was a doctor on hand but never gave him any sort of numbing agent, and just painfully reset his bones or fixed him up. The entire operation was a cruel one, no one showed any sort of care for him and he forgot what it was like to be loved. He was close to being turned into a toy by the men and women, but luck was on his side. After about 3 hours after the shower, Issei began to hear screams of death and pain. It took only 2 minutes, but all the scream died down and everything was silent. It was then his door opened silently and a beautiful black-haired female stood in the doorway. Her hair rained down like silk and she was absolutely stunning. She looked at Issei with a smile on her face and she reached a hand out to him. As he reached out to his savior, something that he wasn't sure why he did, he left his stomach wide open and the female gave him a wicked grin. 2 black wings came out from her back, as black as the midnight sky. Feathers rained down around Issei, and he watched as a spear of light came out of her hand and was shoved into his gut like a rapier. Issei's eyes went wide before they narrowed again, his life quickly leaving his body. "Sorry kid, but I never came to rescue you. I had to take care of what was growing inside of you. Its power scared my superiors and I took it upon myself to rid it of this world. No hard feelings. I made sure to put extra power in it to quickly end your life. Farewell," the black-haired woman said, disappearing in a flash of feathers. With his life leaving his body at a rapid pace, Issei weakly stood up to his feet and began to wobble out the door. He knew his time was nearing its end, but he wanted to see the outside world once more before he died. He would never see his father or his mother again, he knew, but at least he could die seeing the world. As he reached the outside world, he collapsed on the grass outside, a trail of blood coming from the building. With the amount of blood lost, he should have been dead when he was struck in the gut, but Issei's will denied death and kept him moving. As his eyes closed and his life left, the last thing he saw was a purple-haired beauty standing before him with a gentle smile on her face, and he heard one last voice. "I will take you in and let you live your life again. So from now on, you live for me." A young man of 17 was on a bed, his thrusting into another. On a bed with a black velvety curtain was 2 figures, the young man in question and the purple-haired female. She was on her hands and knees, her face buried in her soft black pillows while the young man slammed into her, his hands on her. She was screaming in ecstasy as the boy hit every one of her spots, sending waves of down her spine. On the bed were 3 other females, all of which were splayed out in various positions with their legs twitching. Sweat and white fluid covered their bodice, all of which had an intense orgasm prior to the current display of lewd behavior. The young man was letting out no sound except the lewd slapping of skin upon skin and the wet sounds of a womanhood being ravaged brutally. The young man had no emotion on his face, just a blank stare like a doll. His eyes were chocolate brown and his messy hair, which was messy because of the previous females clinging onto him, was chocolate brown as well. Yes, this young man was issei. His body was no longer scrawny and weak. He showed a great musculature, a good six-pack, though he wasn't disgustingly muscular either. His arms were still a bit thin in comparison to other muscular people, but he still had a good deal of muscle if any would just take a look. He was a very and handsome man, just like his father and what the kidnappers predicted. Issei had ravaged the other females in the bed, his stamina and will unparalleled. Though, his will was questionable. His mind was completely broken, his eyes hollow and devoid of any emotion. Back in the cell where he stayed under the kidnapper's thumb, his eyes were filled with pain, depression, loneliness, and anger. Now they were just empty like death. He was what he was taught to be from the beginning. A toy. A toy which was to the female and to serve his mistress with every fiber of his being. He was no longer a human being in mind, just a mindless drone bent on ing and serving. Yes, Issei was a slave. He was trained from the very beginning on how to be one. He was taken from his lovely home in Japan, where his father was a male model and his mother was a housewife. His father died in the kidnapping while his mother was taken to a hospital and was in a coma. Of course, Issei was told his mother was dead, by the kidnappers, only to further ensure he had no will left to fight off the mind control. Issei was slave to a devil, the purple-haired beauty who took him from the jail and gave him a new life. Yes, Issei was a devil. A creature of night and of myth, a creature who is known throughout history to be evil, according to religion, though no one would have guessed that religion was wrong all along. Well, accuracy-wise. The devils were a race, not just one person who commanded a horde of demons to do his bidding. Not a single person who wanted to bring down heaven and to bring down the human race. While devils did use humans to further their power, it wasn't out of malicious intent. Not at all. Just how business was run in the underworld. Religion also was wrong because there wasn't just one religion that was real. Hindu, Norse, Chinese, Japanese, Greek, Roman, and many other factions of religion existed. Yes, even Anubis, the Egyptian god of the dead, existed. This was a world unlike anyone could have dreamed, but there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. This devil, this purple-headed temptress, was none other than Hooky Asmodeus, daughter to the great devil king, Falbium Asmodeus. As such, she was quite a popular figure in the devil world. While she did not work in any important position like her father, she was treated like royalty was expected. Of course no one, not even her father, knew that underneath her beautiful and kind exterior, existed a cruel succubus who had quite the lewd and naughty fetish. Issei thrusted into his mistress and released a load of his warm essence deep into her womb, filling her belly up with his warmth. She collapsed into her silky sheets, her own orgasm ripped through her spine like a bullet, her womanhood clenching the air like a black hole, her body spasming from the release. Issei sat there on his knees, waiting for his next orders. It took about 5 minutes, but his mistress lifted her body up without care, her large bouncing as she smiled down at the other females. "Isn't he as good as I said?" They all nodded and breathed a yes. They were still very weak from the rough ing that Issei was commanded to give them. Hooky giggled into her hand and stretched her body, giving a loud yawn, looking at Issei. She gave him a sly grin and rubbed under his chin with a slender finger before chuckling. "Well, weren't you worth all the wait? I'm so glad they were able to make good on their promise and turn you into such a good little toy. Of course, I had to do the finishing touches, but I didn't expect the fallen angel to step in, but it was worth it in the end. Didn't take much effort on my part." She giggled out, her evil eyes looking upon him. She had just told him a dark secret, though he secretly knew all along, though he never had proof. Hooky was the reason he was kidnapped in the first place. She was the reason he suffered for so long, and now, he was a slave for her, unable to think on his own. All he knew was to serve and to. Everyone may think that men can't be raped, but they are all wrong. Men can be raped just as much as a female can, yet no one will believe one. Issei was rescued when he was 12, almost 13, and taken into the custody of his mistress, and though he thought he was saved, only a week passed since he was rescued and he was showed how cruel his mistress could be. Spankings, his body being violated constantly and his will being torn away from him. While he was never whipped or punched or just brutally being clobbered, he was showed that UAL activities can be just as bad if not worse. His purity was taken when he was 13 as he was bound in chains. All he could hear was the taunting and wry laughter from his mistress. You may say no, but your cock never lies. It wants this. Ha! Otherwise it could never get up. She taunted and laughed. Every time she would take him, she would say this. It took 3 years, but when he was 16, his will and mind were completely shattered. The only thing remaining was an empty shell. A lifeless doll that followed orders to a T. He was subjected to massive amounts of debauchery, having already ed his mistress every day since he was first violated, if not multiple times. He also was passed around to many other female devils, not even part of Haoki's peerage. She paid off several debts using Issei's body, and she never once cared. She had no trouble letting Issei screw other girls, or letting other girls have a taste of Issei's body. She in fact engaged in quite lewd activities with the other girls. Threesomes were quite common. Issei was also part of a 6-female orgy at one point as well. While Issei was being treated as nothing but man meat, he was also ordered to train his body and get stronger for raiding games. Issei had actually competed in such competitions before, and he was quite strong. He was brutal in his attacks as he was in his ings, breaking bones quite normal for him. He was vicious. So Issei was either in the bedroom, the kitchen for cooking, or the gym. Yes, Issei was the cook for Haoki and her peerage and was quite good at it. He was treated as a female is stereotyped to be. In the kitchen or the bedroom. Haoki wasn't exactly the brightest of them all, as she never knew that Issei had a secret power inside of him. A powerful power inside of his own body. Not even he knew, but unknown to him, as he gained strength he would awaken this power. And this power would change his life forever. Haoki clapped and spoke to Issei. All right, be a good boy and go to bed, Issei. I want a breakfast of French toast in the morning before I wake up. Now shoo, Haoki said, as Issei left her bed and her room, leaving the 4 girls in the bed they shared. He made his way down the hallway of the large mansion on the human world, somewhere in Japan. Issei had no idea where he was, but it wasn't like he cared now. Issei made his way to his room under the staircase, a very small space that only had a small bed. Yes, he lived the hairy lifestyle, if not worse. As he laid on his bed, his mind immediately shut off like a light and he was shoved into his dreamscape, though it was normally just a bland and black where he sat in the corner. It started out as such, but about 5 minutes later, it turned into Antarctica. He wasn't cold oddly, but he knew he was supposed to be. It was then some rumbling appeared, and out of a large mound of ice and snow, appeared a slender and icy blue dragon. It stretched out and let out a yawn, loud and feminine. It was then the dragon noticed the boy and she narrowed her eyes. Yes, this was a female dragon. She had ice blue eyes, just like her body, though just a shade or two darker. Her claws on all 4 of her legs were long and sharp and her tail ended in a wicked-looking spike. Her back was smooth of any sort of spikes, though her head had 2 small horns. Her slender, however, was that of a Spinosaurus, and so was her teeth. She stared at the boy for quite some time, his emotionless and blank stare staring up at her. She cocked an eyebrow, or at least that is what she attempted to do if she had one. She, however, did arch the top of her eye, quite curious with the boy. So you are my host? I could have sworn I was dead. Ha ha ha, I guess they failed after all in ridding of me completely. So tell me, what is your name? She asked. Issei just stared up at her, not even answering. She wasn't his mistress. Why is it you are silent? Are you scared? No answer. She narrowed her eyes, not liking being ignored. Or at least someone not talking to her when she was talking to them. It was then her head quickly dipped to the ground and she let out a loud growl of pain, her slender claws on her head, holding her head as if she had a massive headache. Well, actually she was having a massive headache. She was reliving Issei's life as they were connecting finally. She let out growls of pain, fury, and sadness, all in one go, her body shuddering. When the pain and images stopped, she looked at the boy with a look of pity. She moved over to the boy and circled around him until her body could wrap around him. At least put him in the middle. Her large and long reptilian tail wrapped around his body protectively as her long wings also did the same. She laid her head near the boy, nuzzling him softly. I'm so sorry, my dear boy. I can't believe that there are people who have suffered as much as you have. I guess I was given to you to protect you. My name is Cindergosa. I've been called Cinder before though. I am one of the legendary dragons, equal if not greater than the twin heaven dragons. I was known by many names. The frost dragon Snydra. The great mother dragon, or one that I wasn't fond of. The ice bitch. Issei sat there in the protective cocoon of the dragon, not speaking or moving. He, however, felt a warmth he barely remembered. The hug of his mother. The love of his mother. The protective feeling of his blanket. This warmth was only the beginning of his recovery. I will help you right now, Issei. You won't have to feel the pain any longer. You can be back to as normal as possible. You can live a life now, no longer will you have to be a slave. Just let me in, let me take control. Release your mind to be let me in. As if on command, Issei woke up with a jump, his body sitting straight up. His eyes were closed but a smile spread across his face. It was sinister and full of malicious intent. His eyes opened and no longer were they chocolate orbs. No, they were the color of ice. Issei stood out of his bed and made his way through the house, heading to his mistress's room. As he opened the door, his mistress woke up and she peered out into the darkness. As her vision quickly turned to normal, she spotted Issei in the darkness, her devil eyes able to see everything. Issei? What are you doing here? I told you to go to bed. Issei strode over the bed, his blue eyes staring right at his mistress, ignoring the other females on the bed. Issei. I said go to bed. Hooky yelled, awakening the other girls. She glared at Issei, not liking the defiance. Don't make me punish you. Punish? Haven't you been doing that from the very beginning to him? Asked a very feminine voice from Issei's. Yes, the voice of Sindragosa appeared and she spoke through him. Hooky quickly sat up and looked at him. You aren't Issei, are you? How observant of you. No, I am not him. Sindragosa walked over to Hooky and stood before her. Who are you? Hooky said, summoning her knife behind her back, her hand clutching the blade. My name doesn't matter, but I guess telling you won't matter, since you will be dead. Hooky was quick and aimed her knife at Issei's throat, but his hand shot up and grabbed onto her hand, quickly twisting and breaking the wrist. Sindragosa smiled through Issei and his other hand raised covered in an icy blue gauntlet. The name is Sindragosa. A dragon of legend. The fingers were tipped in savage claws which came down quickly and removed the ability to scream from Hooky, who fell back on her bed. The blood began to pool around her body as her life quickly left her body. The screams from the other girls, who were frozen in fear at the sight of Issei changed, were quickly silenced with more swipes from the gauntlet. As Sindragosa left the room, she made her way out of the mansion and quickly began to head away from the area, taking Issei back home. The room left behind looked like a painting with all the blood everywhere, and all girls were treated the same way. Throats removed with 3 gashes in the throat. Sindragosa wasn't cruel, and just ended their lives. It wasn't what they deserved, but it was just quick and easy. In a large room, a crimson-haired buxom beauty sat behind a desk. A pair of reading glasses sat upon the bridge of her nose as she read the small print on the papers before her. She sighed and rubbed her eyes, tired. It was then the doors opened and stepped in a black-haired beauty who looked at the tired female. She gave a cough and the red-haired female looked up and let out a beautiful smile. Akino, you're up late. What's up? We got a call from the Great Duke. A stray devil killed Falbium's daughter. What? Hooky? Akino nodded. It seems the one responsible is a devil that was once a human. He was part of her peerage. Rias, he lives in this town. I see. Gather the others. We need to handle this. Falbium must be devastated. I will get the others. And yes, he is. I saw him. Let's get the bastard who would kill such a sweet girl. Yes. His chocolate brown eyes awoke suddenly as the train jerked suddenly. Issei quickly looked around, slightly panicked, his eyes darting everywhere. He was alone on the train and the clock near the door said it was about 1 a.m. It was then he heard a familiar voice, a soothing voice. Calm down, Issei. You're safe. I rescued you from that evil devil and I've taken you to a train station. I had stolen money from the woman as well. We are on our way to your hometown of Kua. You want to go there, right? Issei did a slight nod, his first acknowledgement of any kind. Well, started Sindragosa with a happy chuckle. It looks like being freed from the bitch worked wonders. No response of any kind. Alrighty then, no jokes. Sindragosa said before a silence fell over the two and the train itself, except the clickety-clack of the train on the tracks. Issei stared out the window across from him, his body never moving and his eyes never leaving the one spot. He was just staring creepily at the outside flashing before his eyes. It was then he shut his eyes tight and a tear escaped him, as the flashing lights before him brought back painful memories. Sindragosa let out a sigh as she felt the memories herself as she was a part of him. I wish I could keep more control of you, but I'm really tired for some reason. I thought I was sleeping the entire time, but I guess I didn't exist until I was put into you. Pity. I will need to sleep soon, but can I ask a question? No acknowledgement. Are you educated by any chance? I wouldn't think you got much of an education considering. I am educated. He speaks. Well, don't you have such a wonderful voice? No acknowledgement. Okay, fine, no more jokes. Sorry. How educated? College graduate. Surprising but good. Do you know much about the devil world or the supernatural world at all? Yes. Well, as you know now, I am Sindragosa. I am one of the legendary dragons in legend, though not much is known about me. I was a very secluded dragon, only wanting to be left alone. My power was great, but I had no interest in conquering anything, unlike most dragons. I was killed during the great war between the three powers, the fallen angels, the devils, and the angels. The 4 devil kings sought my power and went to find me. When I refused, they attacked me and slain me while I wasn't looking. They were cowards. Anyways, it is nice to meet you, issei. No answer, and Sindragosa went silent. After about 5 minutes, Issei spoke up again. Why save someone like me? Sindragosa yawned loudly. Don't fret, child. I have no interest in enslaving you. I freed you because you needed to be freed. What was done to you was despicable beyond words, and I can't fathom being subject to that kind of torture. So for my sake, live your life the way you want to. Be happy and try to live a normal life. I can take control anytime you like, but I need my sleep. You will be home in a few hours. Just go home and rest, we can talk later, Sindragosa said, her voice slowing down as she fell asleep. Issei just kept quiet the rest of the ride, his eyes closing as he began to sleep as well. Back in some kind of cavernous mansion, a group of figures were sitting around a round table, in deep thought. Then a man, who was sitting in quite the expensive chair, spoke up. I want that boy with us. He is going to run into a trap at his hometown of Kuv, and I think we can persuade him to join our side. Are you sure? The dragon doesn't like your ancestor. Your father killed him. She could easily wipe you out. You are very strong as the other 2 superdevils, but she is a unique existence. While not much more powerful in strength than the heavenly dragons, she has unique abilities. I am aware of this, my dear Katla, but it is of little concern. She should have no problem if the boy wants to join our side. Plus, knowing her own personality, I don't think she will hold a grudge against myself. As for her power, I am still researching a way to get around it. In the meantime, I hold it to one of you to get this boy to join us. Do not fail me. Of course not. I will save him at the right time. This should prove that we are on his side. I will leave you to it. Everyone else nodded and disappeared in magic circles or puffs of smoke, while the leader, who was in the expensive chair, sat back and played with a cup of wine, his thoughts on the future. Issei was jerked awake by the stop of the train, and he noticed that it was his stop. He walked out of the train doors as it began to close on him, but made it through, so he began to walk out of the train station, in which he was frozen on the spot. It was his home. It had changed greatly since he was gone, but it was his home. He would recognize the mountains anywhere and the beautiful trees near the station. The nearby park was unchanged, and it would have brought a smile to his face if he ever showed emotion. Issei began his trek down the main street, heading towards his home, at least the home he had before, if it was still his home. He had no clue if it was still his home, or if it was destroyed, if someone moved in or something. No idea. He made his way up the street and finally stopped in front of his house, looking up at the building. It looked the same, and his yard stayed the same at least. He stood there looking up at the house, his fists clenching and unclenching, trying to get the nerve to enter his house. After about 2 minutes of this, he walked over and reached for the doorknob, giving it a twist. It was locked. He knelt down and felt under the rug for a moment before finding a hidden pocket in the door mat. He pulled out a key and unlocked his door before reaching for the doorknob again. He turned it slowly and opened it, releasing the door. He stood there and looked inside, clenching and unclenching once again before entering his home. He looked to his left and spotted the laundry room before moving down the main hallway and entering the far door to the right. It was the living room. He flicked a switch and the lights came on, and that is when he saw that his house didn't change at all since he had been gone. It wasn't untouched as the place was clean like someone cleaned it just a few hours ago. The lights still worked, and he moved to the kitchen, turning on the light before moving to the fridge. On the fridge was a note. "Hello Issei, this is the paramedic who helped your mother out. If you are reading this, then you have returned home. Your mother is in the hospital right now. I will come by every couple months and put a date on the back of this paper to let you know if she is still around when you come back. If you want to come see her, please do. Your mother misses you. Sincerely, Ichika." Paramedic. Issei turned the paper over, and before he could even get a look at the dates, a sword made of flame embedded itself in the fridge, hitting the piece of paper before lighting it on fire. Issei turned around and was now staring at two figures. One was a blonde-haired pretty boy who was wielding a sword. The other one was a short petite girl with white hair with gloves on her hands. Obviously a fist fighter. "I missed," spoke the girl in an emotionless voice. "Don't worry about it, Kaneko. I didn't make the best aerodynamic sword anyway," said the boy with a smile. "Let's finish this. We got school in the morning," Kaneko said, pushing the dining room table out of the way before charging at Issei. Issei quickly dodged away before making a beeline for the front door. As he did a limbo-type move, ducking under the sword of the swordsman. As he made his way out of the house, a bolt of thunder struck down from the heavens, striking right where Issei was going go. Issei was blown to the side a few yards, sending him into the nearby bushes. "I missed," said Akino, a beautiful girl with a ponytail. Rias shot a blast of destruction at Issei in the bushes, but he quickly rolled away only to get up quickly. "In the name of Gremory, I will avenge the murder of Hookie by eliminating you. You killed such a sweet girl, and it is time for you to face the music. Die," Rias said, not playing around. She shot another blast of destruction at Issei, who began to sprint away again. He leapt away from the destruction, sprinting down the street. He was being attacked and chased by beautiful girls and a handsome boy. He really needed help, but Sindragosa was sleeping still. As Issei turned the corner to head to the nearby 24-hour mall, a bench flew from behind and hit him in the back, sending him tumbling all over the ground, scraping his body up. He then felt a blade embed itself into his stomach, sending his head back in pain. He wasn't making any sound to indicate he was in pain though. As the swordsman approached his right side, Issei looked at Rias, who looked over at him as she walked. "You do not deserve to live anymore. You who has killed his master is a stray, and it is our duty to eliminate strays in our territory. Thank us for being so merciful, as your death will be quick, despite you not deserving such mercy. Now perish," Rias said. Issei lay there accepting his death. He was finally going to be free from his misery and pain, but it seemed he wasn't granted death just yet. Out from a magic circle appeared a swordsman of some sort, who blocked the swing from the blonde swordsman who was attempting to behead the fallen boy. Out from the same magic circle appeared 5 more swordsmen, all of whom took stances to defend Issei. Once they were in position, a very strong-looking man came from the magic circle and approached Issei. "Come with me if you want to live," spoke the man in a deep German accent. Issei hesitated but took his hand, as the will to see his mother before he died possessed him to accept the hand. Issei was pulled to his feet and was taken to the magic circle, blood pouring from his stomach. The man turned to Rias and smiled. "I'll be back." It was then all of the swordsmen, Issei and the strong man disappeared in a flash of light. Rias growled and clenching her fists, looking at the ground where they left. "Damn it! That little bastard escaped." "Rias," spoke a deep voice. Rias turned around and her eyes went wide. "Brother! I am sorry to intrude, but it seems we uncovered something disturbing. You should come with us and see for yourself. Hookie was not the innocent girl we all knew." Rias nodded in confusion, disappearing with her brother. The others also disappeared, going with her. Issei appeared at the front door of a large mansion, somewhere unrecognizable. The sun was coming out, but it was still a place where Issei has never been or seen before. As he entered behind the big man who let him inside, a playful and teasing voice popped out of the darkness of the upstairs. With two golden cat-like eyes, this voice spoke. It was a girl. Well, who is this cutie pie, Naya? So who is this cutie pie, Naya? Asked a playful and teasing voice. It was a female's voice, and Issei moved his eyes slightly and spotted a pair of golden cat-like eyes staring from the darkness of the second floor. He couldn't see the girl, but her eyes glowed. The man who rescued Issei left Issei's side and headed for another door. This is just a kid we were ordered to pick up. Since you seem so interested, he is your responsibility. He's all yours. The man said, waving goodbye, and closed the set of doors behind him. It was now just Issei and the mysterious female from the second floor. Issei stood stock still on the spot, not entirely sure what he was supposed to do now. It was the awkward moment of being in a strange house and not entirely sure if he could touch anything. Yes, the feeling everyone knows at least once. So what's your name, Naya? The female asked. Issei stood there, just looking straight forward at the set of doors the other man left through. The girl narrowed her eyes, not in anger but curiosity. She was not used to being ignored. She was in fact used to men and women alike fawning all over her and giving her what she wanted. Now a challenge presented itself to her, and she was drawn to it like cats are drawn to catnip. What's with the silent treatment, Naya? You afraid of little ol' me, Naya? No answer once again. Just utter silence and a blank, emotionless stare. It was then Issei heard movement, and his eye slightly looked over and noticed a pair of white female legs appeared on the steps, and out of the darkness walked a stunningly gorgeous woman. She had humongous, long black hair with split bangs. She wore a kimono that was dangerously open at the shoulders, giving very generous amounts of cleavage. Her kimono had a red interior and was tied with a yellow obi. She had two black cat ears on the top of her head along with a long black fluffy tail which swished back and forth. She approached Issei with a sway in her, a playful aura surrounding her. This was a cat, and a very playful one at that. She stood in front of Issei and looked him dead straight in the eyes. She was bent forward as she looked at him with curiosity which gave him quite the view of her. Whether or not this was her intention, it had no effect on the boy who just stared blankly into the golden eyes of the feline. So what's with the silence, Naya? She asked, her eyes still scanning his own for anything. Yet she was stumped, which is why she asked such a question. Usually the eyes revealing someone's soul, yet for Issei, his eyes were empty. Hollow. This was not normal. Something is wrong. Why don't you tell me, Naya? I'm a real good listener. It was then Issei's eyes closed for a while, and when he opened them, they were ice blue. It was XDoug-Dimmadome-x. Naya, that's strange. The key has shifted. You aren't the boy anymore, are you? So you noticed? Interesting. I assume a senjutsu user, since you are detecting aura. It is to meet someone other than the great Sun Wukong who can use senjutsu well. Naya, to be compared to him, is quite nice. So who are you? I am XDoug-Dimmadome-x. I am the dragon that lives within Issei. His name is Issei? I like it. Naya, XDoug-Dimmadome-x? Are you by any chance the dragon from Antarctica? The one and the same. To get to the main topic, Issei is not exactly social. Naya, that was obvious. Something painful must have happened to him. I haven't seen such empty eyes, Naya. The boy has been through something I don't think anyone could imagine. Honestly, it is a girl's worst nightmare, I guess. Issei is damaged greatly, and honestly I'm not sure if I can bring him around. I was unable to help him during his suffering, but I did get him to escape. What happened, Naya? I'm curious. Typical cat, XDoug-Dimmadome-x said with a smirk. I would rather not explain. It would take a while. Naya, that's okay. I can just use senjutsu to access his memories. It's dangerous, but I'm sure it's harmless to me. Actually, I'll just explain it. I don't want to get you hurt, XDoug-Dimmadome-x said with a sigh. Naya, I'm a big girl. Issei, well, to put it simply, Issei was a slave. What? The girl asked, quite confused and shocked. No longer was the playful and teasing voice. It was a serious moment. It is true. He was taken from his home back in Ko, where he was brought up to be a slave. Nothing but a toy for a woman. Abuse beyond any unimaginable scale was brought upon him. Noticed the scar on his face? I noticed it a while ago, but I thought it might have been a birthmark. No, that was the touch of a malicious woman who Issei ignored. She took a knife and jammed it under his eye, carving his face. I'm not sure what to say about it. It doesn't sound pleasant. No one knows what to say in these situations. Even I found it hard to say something to him. There was just nothing that I could say that would help him. Would you like to know more, or are we good? I'm good. I really am not interested in any more. It doesn't make me too happy to hear someone go through that. I can relate to abuse, I mean. Most people can relate to some abuse, but I don't think you realize how long he has been put through hell or how much hell he went through. But that is all right. So, to put it plainly, the boy you see before you is what you get. I have gotten him to talk to me, but he trusts me, I guess. He won't say much though, only saying short sentences and with many pauses. But he never actually once voiced anything. He has thought to me though. I see. I can take care of him, Naya, said the cat girl with a wink. Cindergosa let out a sigh. Oh yes, I feel so confident in leaving him in your care, she said sarcastically. She shrugged Issei's shoulders. Well, good luck. I'm going back to sleep. He's all yours, she said before closing Issei's eyes and letting him awaken. Issei's eyes quickly darted around the room, seeing he was standing in the same location as usual, before he looked at the cat girl before him. Naya, hi Issei. No response. Such a shy boy. My name is Koruka and you are under my care now, Naya. We shall have some fun, Koruka said with a wink, walking off and waving her hand. Make yourself at home. I'm hungry. Issei watched her as she left. His hope of freedom already disappeared from his mind. He was a slave once again. Rias and her group were sitting in a large meeting room, looking at several computer screens. They were showing videos of security cameras and transactions along with snitches. Rias looked astounded. So Issei was a slave? Yes, her brother xDoug stated. It seemed with her death several people who were too scared to say anything finally came forth with information. It was with this that we investigated further and found several security tapes and other things that told us that she bought Issei many years ago. Issei was kidnapped at age 7 according to the newspapers. We don't know what happened between the kidnapping and him being taken in by Hookie, but we assume he was broken down into the mindset of the slave. And we basically just attacked a kid who has probably been put through something worse than what Kaneko was put through. xDoug looked at Kaneko with a sad smile. Yes, unfortunately I think so. I think that what he went through was something no one can imagine, except some sick twisted author who enjoys dark tales. On top of that, the boy has Cindergosa inside of him. I have confirmed it now. So you are thinking this is gonna bite us in the butt, aren't you? Aquino asked. I don't know yet. I can only hope that it doesn't, but I fear that we may have a new enemy who doesn't trust anybody, with power to destroy the world. He is probably filled with so much hate that nothing we can say will stop him. Issei finally moved from his spot in the large part of the mansion, the entrance basically. Koruka had returned from her dinner with a smile on her lips and her tail swishing. She had said she was going to take a shower. Issei moved towards the shower and opened the door, already undressed. He quietly closed the door and opened the shower curtain, his blank stare not even taking a peek at the gorgeous female before him, only moving in behind her. Koruka turned her head quickly and looked at Issei. Naya, what a naughty boy you are, taking a peek at me. Issei quietly and almost robotically began to rub her back with a warm and wet washcloth, with a slight sud on it. She blinked for a bit, her witty remarks caught in her throat. Here was the boy who was treated as a slave, given freedom basically, washing her back and not taking a peek at her. Normally, boys would be all over her, wanting to grope her, yet he was just staring at his hands, blankly and robotically. It was then Issei grabbed Koruka's shoulders and gently turned her around, eliciting a mew from the very proud and strong female. She let out such a cute little noise, not really one she would emit. She was stock still in shock as she felt Issei's calloused hands touch her with the washcloth, washing her. She blinked and looked down and noticed that Issei wasn't even erect. This brought the weight of the situation crashing down upon her instantly. He was in slave mode. And just as quickly as he started, he was finished and he moved Koruka out of the shower, not even letting her have her long showers to think about the universe. He took out a towel and began to dry her off, though he left her hair alone, handing her the towel. He bowed his head to her and left the bathroom, leaving the shocked cat behind. Issei had essentially just groped the highest cat girl in existence, and one of the hottest girls in the world, and he didn't even get a slight erection. This worried Koruka greatly, and it damaged her pride as well. She was angry and upset at the same time. Angry that he wasn't aroused by her, and she was upset that he was so broken down, that all he did was act like some toy. Naya, Koruka said sadly. This kid really needs help. After Koruka finished with her hair drying, which took like 3 hours like it does for all women, she made her way to her bedroom, a yawn escaping her lips. Before she collapsed on her nice comfy bed, she stopped for a moment and turned around, hoping to run into Issei. She walked all around the mansion, as it was her current house which she procured with some strange means, and looked in every room that she could think of. She scratched her head wondering where the poor boy disappeared to. He was not around. She then rolled her eyes at her own stupidity, and finally sensed the boy using her senjutsu. She was tired and she wasn't exactly thinking correctly, but she stopped before the closest under the large stairs near the entrance of the mansion. She blinked for a moment, wondering why Issei would be in such a room, but she opened up the closet and spotted the young man sleeping on a couple towels with a bunch of towels under his head and a sheet for a blanket. She kneeled down and looked at him before gently rubbing his right. "What the did they do to you?" she half whispered to him. It was more of a rhetorical question. Koruka gently shook him until he awoke, and when he opened his eyes, he was quick to move into a kneeling position and bow his head, as if apologizing for something. Koruka let out a sigh and slightly smiled. "Issei, come to my room please. I want to have a talk," Koruka said gently and softly to the boy. He looked up at her and slowly got up, before following the cat up the stairs and into her room. She watched as he moved quickly in front of her though and opened up her bedroom door, which would have been gentlemanly if it wasn't for the current situation. She sat on her bed and looked up at him, who stood a few feet away from her, head bowed to her. Issei waited for his punishment like a good toy would, but all he felt was a slender finger lift up his chin. Koruka gave him a small smile and shook her head, sighing. "All right, I think I understand what is going on now. When I said you are under my care, I really meant it in the context it was said in. Issei, I will be taking care of you. I don't need you to take care of me. Issei, you are free. You can leave this mansion and never come back if you wanted to. I wouldn't stop you. No one would. You are free from the shackles that have binded you for so long. Do you understand?" Koruka asked, her voice sweet and lacking the usual sensual tone. She wasn't teasing him nor was she being playful. She was serious, hence the lack of the normal Naya. No response from the man, but a flicker in his eyes let Koruka smile once again. "I want you to understand something one more time. You can leave right now. Leave this mansion and return home. You do not have to stay here. You can do whatever you want now. Anything you want. So, please, tonight, figure out where you want to go and go. I won't hunt you down, and neither will any of the people who rescued you earlier. If you want, I can give you a sock. Would that make you understand any better how free you are?" Koruka asked, chuckling a bit at her joke. "Alright, Issei, it's time for bed, alright?" No response, but Issei turned around and headed for the door. Koruka pounced onto her bed and laid her head on her cool pillow, shutting her eyes and letting her drowsiness flood her mind. However, she opened her eyes suddenly and narrowed them, letting out a sigh. "Damn it, I should have known," Koruka said, getting out of bed and walking out of her room. She went down the stairs and to the closet. She opened up the door, picked up Issei who was remaking his bed and carried him up the stairs before placing him on her bed, on the right side of the bed. "Stay. Good boy," Koruka said, acting like he was a dog. She was kidding of course, and she hoped that he understood that she was joking. About 10 minutes later, she felt Issei move around and she felt her questionable underwear being pulled down. She sat up suddenly, and saw the boy and preparing to enter her. She looked at him incredulously and sighed. "Alright, that's it. Night time. I will deal with you in the morning," Koruka said, striking Issei in the forehead with a senjutsu flick, knocking him out. She rubbed her temples and hissed a bit. "This is going to be fun repairing this kid. Why am I all of a sudden wanting to fix him? I will never understand myself sometimes." "He... having fun?" spoke Cindergosa through his gauntlet. "You," Koruka said, laying down and closing her eyes. All I will say before I head back to sleep is, thank you. I know you are trying to fix him, and while I don't think you are the best influence on him, I know you have good intentions for him as well. Naya, I think I'm a great influence, just their mothers don't, Kuroka said playfully, a large grin on her face. Her black tail sensually flicked over his, rubbing circles on it. Sindragosa groaned loudly. Oh, just brilliant, Sindra, let a UAL fiend heal a slave. Just brilliant, Sindragosa said to herself, though out loud, before heading to sleep. Before Sindragosa fell asleep, she heard the sinister and playful laughter of a vixen. It was morning and Kuroka finally began to awaken, her gorgeous body stretching as the sunlight began to hit her body. She let out a purr of satisfaction from the sun hitting her in stomach. She opened her eyes and at first noticed Issei was not in her bed, but when she used her senjutsu, she could tell he was coming to her room, and just then, the door opened. She watched Issei bring in a tray of food, all of which smelled delicious. He placed it over her lap and bowed deeply to her, another apologetic sign. She sighed and placed the tray beside her and stood up. She shook her head and lifted his chin once again with a finger. Issei, why aren't you listening to me? Huh! You don't have to be a slave anymore. Please understand this. I want to help you. I don't know why I want to, but I do. Please listen to me. You are not a slave anymore. You are free, Kuroka said before going to her dresser. She opened the dresser and grabbed her dairy, one that she hadn't used for many years, before placing one of her dirty socks from the hamper into the book. She closed the book around the sock and placed the book into his hands before using his hands to open the book for him. Look, a sock. You are free. Get it now? No response, but she felt a visible shift in his aura. A big one. She smiled, hoping that he finally got it. Come on, share this breakfast you made for me with me. All right? I don't eat this much anyway, Kuroka said, sitting on the bed and patting beside her a few times. It took a few seconds, but Issei slowly walked over to her and slowly sat down on her bed, as if testing the waters to see if she was being serious. When she made no move to hit him or punish him, he sat down completely. This got Kuroka to smile greatly, where she placed the tray on both of their laps, digging into the food herself. She looked up at him and he slowly began to eat the food as well, which got Kuroka to smile even bigger. They finished their meal together, and Issei grabbed the dishes from her, in which she fought him, and she took half of the dishes with her. She followed him down the stairs and into the kitchen, where they both went to the sink and began to clean up the dishes by rinsing them and placing them into the dishwasher. As they were doing so, one of the swordsmen from the day before placed his cup down. More coffee, he demanded. Issei quickly moved from his cleaning and grabbed the coffee glass thing and poured the man more coffee. Kuroka watched the entire thing before rage entered her veins. She walked over and backhanded the man with a powerful swing, glaring down at the man who looked up at her shocked. She never hit anybody. She was always a flirty, playful kitty. How dare you? I thought you knew what he went through. How dare you treat him like he was treated before? Issei is not a slave any longer. Don't ever demand something from him again. If you wanted coffee, say please and thank you. Don't expect it, Kuroka said with furious anger. Kuroka turned to Issei with anger, but her expression softened immensely, and she gave him a smile. Don't ever serve anyone like that again, Issei. Okay? Including me. Don't listen to demands. If they say please and you want to do it, then do it, but you are not a slave anymore. Just because someone demands something of you, doesn't mean you have to do it. No one here is going to hurt you. You are free. Please, this one time, listen to this one demand. Never listen to demands, Kuroka said, scolding him slightly. She turned to the man who was slowly getting back into his seat, who looked up at the cat girl with fear. She gave him the evil eye and left the kitchen, heading back to her room. The man looked to Issei, who was finishing up the dishes, and gave him the "I'm so jealous of you" look. Of course, the man was just a pig and had no idea about what was going on between the two, but he also didn't exactly give a shit about Issei either. Issei finished up his dishes and left to Kuroka's room, entering the room. He walked in on her changing and he got to see everything, even her naughty bits. She looked at him and gave him a smile before shaking her head. I suppose you are used to seeing this, huh? I wonder if you are truly ruined to the point you can't be turned on anymore by a woman, Kuroka asked, not really asking him though. She had sighed as well, not really caring he saw her. She loved being and she loved naughty things, but this wasn't the time for any naughtiness. She just worried over the poor man, who suffered so much. She got dressed in another kimono and turned to him and smiled. "Come on. I'm taking you out," Koruka said, grabbing his hand in an unlike her fashion. This was not something Koruka does normally, as she was a flirt basically. As she exited the house with the boy in hand, a voice halted her. "Well, this is something you don't see every day," voiced a very happy-go-lucky voice. Koruka turned and looked up and smirked. "Biko, I'm heading out to the town, Naya. Nothing out of the ordinary." "Come now, Koruka. You never take a boy with you, at least like this. I'm just surprised is all. So is this the one rescued the day before?" "Yes, and I am taking care of him," Koruka said seriously this time. "I don't want any trouble." Biko shrugged. "You should know me by now. I really don't care about what you do, I was just curious about the new kid. I feel such power radiating from him though. Yet, he is quite emotionless and well, he's basically a doll. It's really strange, why hasn't he snapped yet? I'm not sure myself, but I think he's been so broken he doesn't register emotions right now. I think he might snap when his emotions return to him though." "Ah, well, have fun with your date," Biko teased. "I always do, Naya," Koruka said with a wink, walking with Issei once more. When they got away enough, Koruka began to talk again. "That was Biko. He is one of my friends, and we just tease each other a lot. He isn't going to hurt you either. If anything, he would protect you from harm. He isn't one to bully another person." No response, of course, but she knew Issei was listening. She felt the aura around him shift greatly since he was brought in, but he was so broken that she didn't exactly make that big of a dent, but there was a big dent that she knew she could fix him. Koruka continued to talk though, just trying to speak. "So, the group that rescued you is part of the Cows Brigade. We are a group of terrorists seeking to destroy the current world, as in the underworld, heaven, and the other religious places. We have no interest in killing the humans though. That being said, Biko and I have no interest in world domination. We were just taken in by them and given a home. I just like to play, but I suppose you know that." Koruka and Issei headed into the nearby town, though it was not Kut and was most likely quite far away as well. You might be wondering by what I meant when I was given a home. I don't know much about Bika's story cause all he talks about is just having fun and getting away from his ancestor. But for me, well, my story is not the happiest one. I have a little sister, who you have met before, and our parents were killed a long time ago. We were orphaned before we were taken in by a devil. This devil was so interested in my powers, that he would brutally train me. It wasn't pretty, but I wasn't strong enough to do anything. Eventually though my power grew strong enough to do something, but I didn't. That was until he started to move in on my sister. Senjutsu and Yukutsu is what I am able to do, and they are great powers. I don't want to explain much about it, but it has a weakness. Those who use Senjutsu take in the malice of the world, and we can get drunk on our power if we aren't strong enough. Well, my sister isn't exactly the strongest person. She is strong, but I knew she would get drunk on her powers and go rogue if she was given the chance to. So, when I found out he was moving in on my sister, I killed him. I had to. I wanted to protect my sister, of course. That didn't exactly go well for me," Koruka said with a sigh. "When I had to run away, she stayed behind, angry at me. She was so angry at me for killing the man who gave us a home that she was left behind. Well, the devils thought I was drunk on my power, and they thought she was too. She was supposed to be killed for what I did. Well, all I know is she was taken in by a devil and has been given a new home. I haven't seen her in many years. Well, that is all about me, at least my past. I rather you find out what I'm like by yourself, Naya," Koruka said with a wink, her playful manner back in full force. Koruka finally stopped talking, though no one minded if she did talk, and they entered the town. Koruka had taken Issei to many places, the mall for shopping, where she would try on clothes and see which ones he liked. Of course, no response, but she enjoyed herself. She even got him to find clothes for himself, and she would tell him which she liked. No responses, but she kept feeling the aura around him shift every time they had a talk. With the talk that they had before, his aura had shifted even greater. It was changing, and she knew that him spending time with someone not trying to do him harm was doing wonders. The first person to show him kindness was her. It made her very prideful. Koruka had taken him to a fancy diner. It was the first time she saw him actually respond to her, though it was more of him pointing to the menu for what he wanted to eat. She had ordered for him, and she continued to speak to him over the dinner. So, this cow's brigade. I don't have plans to stay with them forever. I am more of using them for the home. If I find somewhere better, I am definitely moving out, she said with a smile. Have you decided what you wanted to do? She asked. No response. She didn't expect any. Do you have any parents? She asked, which she immediately regretted. She felt the aura around him shift, and while it didn't exactly make him more broken, she felt sadness. His first emotion was sadness, and she brought it upon him. It was then she felt his aura disappear and felt the aura of Sindragosa arising. Koruka sighed. You didn't do any damage. Don't worry about it. But Issei's parents, while his dad is dead, he died during the kidnapping. As for his mother, the note that was in his house said she was in the hospital. This was back when he was kidnapped. I don't know if she is still there. I see. I didn't mean to offend him or anything. You didn't know any better. He won't hold you against it. Do you think you could find out if his mother is in the hospital in Ku? Easily. Thanks. Enjoy your date, Sindragosa said, disappearing. Issei returned and began to eat once more, his aura back to normal for his current self. Koruka, however, couldn't find it in herself to speak again, so they ate in silence. When they arrived back at the mansion, Koruka told Issei she wanted some alone time, so Issei spent his time wandering around the mansion, as Koruka told him it was okay. He very slightly trusted the cat, as this was the first time someone acted in kindness to him. She was beginning to look like an angel in Issei's eyes, though Sindragosa's idea of an angel differed from his own. Sindragosa had been quiet towards Issei for a while now. She had left him alone to deal with the cat while she slept and regained her strength. So Issei began his journey through the large mansion. He has only seen 3 people in the household, one being the jerk that Koruka had scolded for commanding Issei around, Koruka the cat, and Biko the strange man with a stick. Issei was no longer attempting to serve Koruka, as she told him over and over he was free. At first, he didn't want to believe that someone was giving him his freedom, after being a slave for 10 years. Well, kind of. He wasn't a true slave until Hooky came around, but he was treated like dirt for 10 long years. He didn't get to see the sun for the longest time, and he wallowed in filth. He trusted nobody. He couldn't. Hooky acted with kindness at first, but her kindness was a feint and broke his barrier. After that, he couldn't trust again. Yet here he was trusting the second girl in his life. The cat. He doesn't understand why he was beginning to trust her. There was a loud nagging voice in the back of his head, telling him that she was going to do the same to him, but he refused to believe it. Refused. Issei's eyes were no longer the empty soulless orbs that he had when he first arrived. Yup, it only took a day with Koruka and his eyes were slowly filling with emotion. You could still see the emptiness there, but emotion was slowly filling up his chocolate orbs. Issei was still not on speaking terms with Koruka, but he was showing more reactions, hence the dinner earlier that evening where he pointed out what he wanted to eat. Koruka paid, of course. Issei didn't understand much about what was going on, as his mind was still pretty much locked away, but it seemed the only 2 people he could trust was Sindragosa and Koruka, though the voice nagged him about Koruka. Issei finished his tour of the house, kind of confused. He had not seen hide nor hair of the man who rescued him from the crimson-haired teen, even though he had been in the mansion that night. It wasn't like he was concerned, but he did wonder where the man went. Issei eventually stopped giving a shit about it, and began to head back to the main area of the mansion, so he could wait for Koruka to let him in the room. Issei took a seat on a large lounging chair and put his knees up to his and hugged them. Sleep overtook Issei in about an hour of waiting, so he ended up looking like a drunkard passed out on a chair, his head laid back on the back, his arms limp noodles at the sides of the chair and his legs sprawled out. His was closed luckily, so it didn't exactly finish the picture of a drunk, but it was close enough. He began to dream, which began to turn into a nightmare where he began to remember the night when he was kidnapped, but before his father could get shot, the dream took a turn and turned into Antarctica, where he saw Sindragosa waiting. I think we have had enough nightmares, don't you think? Issei nodded. Come now, you were speaking with me before. Still a bit shy? A little. Well, I am flattered that you trust me enough with your voice. It really is a lovely voice. No response. So it's been a while since I've talked to you. I know it's really only been like a day, but I feel like you need someone to talk to still. So, what do you think of the cat? She's nice, she's looking out for me. Sindra nodded. I agree. While I don't exactly think she's the best influence on you, nor the best person to help you, I do admit she has been doing a wonderful job. Why do you say she's a bad influence? Issei asked, no longer speaking in pauses. Some improvement, Sindra noted. Just the way she is and how her attitude is. She's playful, a tease, and enjoys. She's a flirt, and I don't think she's one to just sit still for very long. That's not a bad influence. I guess I just don't think she's the best one to help you. Issei shook his head in disagreement. I think she's wonderful. She hasn't hit me, she's protected me, she treats me like a real human being? An equal? Issei nodded. No one has ever treated me like that. That's true, Sindra said, lying down on her paws now, a sigh escaping her in defeat. I guess I just worry too much. I guess that is why they call you the Mother Dragon. I suppose. I nag a lot too. I wonder why they didn't call me the Wife Dragon. She wondered for a moment. Issei didn't answer cause he had none, but he hugged his knees to his. I think she's a bad influence because she works with people who want to destroy the current religions and gain supreme power. She seems to enjoy being irresponsible. She's being pretty responsible to me, plus I don't exactly care much for the world anyway. I can't say I feel warm feelings either, Issei, because they slaughtered me too. I just don't think you should become a mass murdering lunatic. Issei didn't respond as he was thinking. This was the only place he could show emotion, though it wasn't much emotion. He was still man who was beat until he was broken, only to be fixed up to be someone's new toy, just missing a few pieces. He was slowly being repaired as the pieces were slowly being returned, but he wasn't normal yet. It was then he was suddenly awoken. Issei looked around the mansion, but he didn't see anything or anyone. He just awoke suddenly, for no apparent reason. It was quite late in the night, and Issei would normally be asleep at this hour, but his nice nap re-energized him for a few hours. He stood up from his chair only to notice that there was a piece of paper on the floor. He bent down and picked it up, only for his eyes to widen slightly. It was a piece of paper from the hospital in Ku that had a list of patients. Listed was Mizore Hayadu. It was Issei's mother. He didn't think about who laid it there, the only thought on his mind was to see his mother. Issei moved up the stairs quickly but silently, not making a sound. It was chilly out but not freezing, as it was the fall, not yet winter, so he quickly grabbed one of Kuroka's hoodies. He was told earlier that he could wear anything in her closest, except her shoes, which she had like 30 pairs of. He put the hoodie on and flipped the hood up, hiding his face before he slowly tiptoed his way out of the room and down the steps. He opened up the main door and exited before closing it behind him quietly. As he made his way down the walkway, a familiar voice stopped in. What are you doing out so late, kid? Issei turned his head slightly and stared blankly at Biko. Biko chuckled and waved him along. I'm just messing with you. I'm about to head to bed myself, Biko said, entering the mansion through a window, like a weirdo. As Issei ended up halfway down the path, he suddenly realized that he had no idea how to get home. He had no idea where he was. He knew he was somewhere in Japan due to the town and their customs, but the location was unknown to him. He clenched his fists for a moment, frustration entering his body. Seeing that his mother was still alive, had put a large piece back into his body. It was then, like a siren, Kuroka spoke behind him. Are we lost now, Naya? She asked playfully. Issei turned to look at her, his eyes looking at her. She gave him a smirk. She was wearing a long-sleeved kimono which was still open at the shoulders, but her cat ears and tail were gone. She walked down the steps and took his hand. Naya, I guess I should escort you at least, she said before snapping. A magic circle appeared and both of them poofed. When Issei was finally able to see once the light was gone, he noticed he was in Ku, standing outside the hospital. There was a large clock nearby, lit up by LEDs. It was midnight. Issei and Kuroka, both still holding hands, walked into the hospital lobby and walked over to the receptionist. She was busy and unhappily looking at her computer, not even looking up at the pair. What is it? She asked. It was quite rude. He is here to see his mother. The girl sighed and looked up at Issei and the girl, looking at Issei a second time. Name? Issei Hayadu, Kuroka replied. Very funny. We all know he's dead. Seriously, I've had to deal with this before. Go away before I call the cops. Issei removed his hood and the girl looked at him before looking behind her at the board. It was a picture of Issei when he was younger and then a computer-generated copy of what he would look like when he was 20. You look nothing like him. Move along, please, the girl said, going back to her computer work. Kuroka felt the aura around Issei deflate a bit, so Kuroka put on a naughty grin and took Issei's hand, heading around the corner into the main building. No one was around to notice, and it wasn't like the receptionist actually noticed anything around her. Someone could be murdered right next to her, and she wouldn't even look up. Issei and Kuroka made their way down the hospital halls, searching for the ICU, or the intensive care unit. Kuroka deemed that this would be a great place to start. As they turned a corner, a doctor ran right into them, knocking the doctor to the ground. He groaned and rubbed his head and Kuroka helped him back up. Sorry about that, the doctor said. I was busy reading on my patient. Kuroka nodded. It's okay. The doctor nodded and began to leave when he turned. Wait, why are you guys here so late? The receptionist told us that Miss Hayado was up here in the ICU, but I can't seem to find her. Oh, she's down the hall and in the double doors on the right, the doctor said. Though she hasn't been awake for 2 weeks. I don't think she will be, never mind, the doctor said, giving them a small sad smile before leaving. Kuroka took Issei's hand and quickly took him into the room, and Issei was quick to remove his hand from Kuroka as he moved quickly to his mother. Kuroka stood by the doors, leaning against it while she watched Issei. Issei grabbed his mother's hand slowly and gave it a squeeze. Mom? Issei whispered, too low for Kuroka to hear, even with her cat hearing. Mizore's eyes opened up slowly, fluttering, and her heart rate increased slightly, as it does when someone awakens. She turned her head and her eyes slightly widened before a tear slowly began to slide down her left. Her other hand reached over and gently stroked Issei's, as if trying to see if it's real. Issei? Hi, Mom, Issei said with a smile, his emotions returned for the moment. Mizore moved and hugged her son as hard as she could, holding him tightly. She was thin, though not bony, and she wasn't exactly hugging him strongly. Issei could tell something was wrong. Issei, I don't understand. I don't know where to begin. We both know that she is dying, Issei. Do you want to show her everything? Sindra asked from within his mind. Issei nodded his head and looked at his mother. Mom, you won't believe me if I tell you, and you may not if I show you, but I want you to see this, Issei said before backing away slightly. He shut his eyes and Sindra's ice blue eyes looked at Mizore. Honey, your eyes, Your son is not who you think he is, Ms. Hayadu, said the female voice from within Issei. This shocked Mizore greatly, her heart rating jumping. But from here on, keep an open mind and everything will be revealed, Sindra said before opening up a palm in her hand and raising it to the sky. She quickly froze all the cameras in the room, as if they suddenly grew ice on their lenses. Their microphones were completely frozen over so nothing could be heard. She then turned and froze the door near Kuroka, freezing the hinges and placing a layer of ice across the entire door. All the windows were also frozen, the shades closed as well. The temperature in the room hadn't dropped a single degree, but there was visible ice. What? I don't understand. Issei returned to his own consciousness and looked at his mother. Mom, please calm down, Issei asked, still whispering. He had whispered this entire time to her, not one to talk normally even to Sindra. Honey, what is going on? Mom, please? Please calm down, Issei asked as a tear fell from his eye. Mizore finally calmed down and studied her son's face for a good while, looking into his eyes. She always had a sixth sense and could tell something deeply troubled her son, and that something had caused him a great deal of pain. Mizore took a deep breath and looked at Issei. Issei, what happened to you after? I can't say. I am a big girl, I can take anything. I was trained to be a slave, he said, looking down at the floor. Mizore gasped audibly and Issei knew she began to cry. Honey, Issei raised a hand to calm her. He grabbed her hand and squeezed it, holding it. There was nothing you could have done for me, and I don't blame you. I won't go into detail about what I've been through, but there's more. About 2 days ago I was rescued, Issei said, his eye slightly darting to the right, indicating Koruka. Mizore caught the slight involuntary action, and she gave him a warm smile. I'm free. I was rescued from this life. You spent 10 years as a? Just about. My boy's innocence was. Yes, I'm not innocent anymore, and I hate that I can't give it to the person I care about. Are you doing okay? You know better than that, Mom. Mizore sniffed and squeezed her son's hand. But I know you are on the track to recovery, aren't you? He nodded and looked down again, but after a few seconds, Mizore squeezed his hand and smiled. Son, what was with the female voice? That will be even more unbelievable for you to hear. I think I can have an open mind now after seeing everything tonight. Mom, religions are real. I'm not following. Zeus, Odin, God, Jesus, every one of those gods existed. I see. So we were all wrong? Not completely, but yes, Issei said with a smile, finally giving her a smile. Koruka was leaning against the wall now, no longer touching the door. She was able to hear Mizore, but not Issei, so it was frustrating trying to imagine what he was saying. She could move closer, but this was not the time for her to be nosy. Mom, I became one of those creatures from the Bible. What? You did? Mom's son, the angel. Issei shook his head and stood back. It was then suddenly out from his back, bat wings grew. Mom, I'm a devil. Mizore frowned deeply, disappointed that his son became an evildoer, but Issei shook his head. I know what you are thinking, but devils are not all evil, okay? If I became one, you know this to be true. Mizore gave a small chuckle. I suppose so. I guess I just thought the worst for a moment. You always did. There is more, Mom. I have a dragon living inside of me. A living fire-breathing behemoth? Kind of. It's more like a soul of a dragon. I have the powers of her too. Her name is Cindergosa. She isn't a fire dragon but an ice dragon. That makes sense. I can see she has helped you as well. She was the first to rescue me, but later on I met others. Mizore nodded. Inside her own mind, she was completely overwhelmed, but she didn't show it. She knew this was real, but everything that was taking place was too much to handle at once, but she was coping. I see. Are you happy being what you are? He nodded. I'm not like this normally, Mom. You're an emotionless doll who has yet to have all the pieces put back. Issei nodded. But you're my mom. I don't think anything could turn someone so bad that they are emotionless to their mom. Mizore smiled. I sure hope so. She giggled out. So are you happy? Yes, I think so. I don't know if I am truly happy, but so far I think I am. That's good then, Issei. Could I speak with the girl over there alone for a few? Issei nodded and looked at Koruka, before walking over to her and grabbing her hand. Koruka followed Issei to the bed, and Issei went back to the wall, sitting on the floor. Mizore noticed that he went to the floor and held his knees to his, but said nothing. So you must be the girl who has captured my son's heart. We both know I've done nothing like that. I suppose so. You are the one who has been helping him. Koruka nodded. It wasn't easy. I had to first break him from his slave mindset. Mizore sighed. I don't think I could ever have imagined my boy being turned into that. No one can. I couldn't imagine my sister as such, and now that I am thinking about it, I don't think I could bear it as strongly as you. I guess a mother is always stronger than you think, so you are like him? I'm a devil, but I'm also different from him. Really? Koruka nodded, and out from the top of her head came her 2 kitty ears, and from her but was her tail. Mizore blinked for a few minutes and looked at the woman's cat ears and tail, then her large. How was all, Mizore said. I can see that when my son is fully repaired, you're going to be a handful one day for me. Koruka smiled slyly. I'm already a handful for him, Naya, she said with a wink, using some playful banter to the mother. Mizore chuckled and sighed. Normally a mother would hate a big-headed gorgeous female that was near her son, but I can see that you have done a great amount for him. For everything you have done and everything you will do, I thank you. You have no idea how much it means to me that you are taking care of my son in my place. Naya, I'm not a mother. How rude, Koruka said. I prefer a sister figure. Mizore chuckled again. Sorry. So, a gorgeous cat girl devil and my son the dragon devil. This has been a weird night for me. Do you hate tonight? No, I got to see my son, and while he wasn't the same as when he left, I am happy to have seen him once more. Silence from the two. A few moments later, though, Mizore asked a question. Are you going to keep taking care of my son? As long as he remains useful, Naya. Kuroka joked. Well, he's screwed, Mizore said quickly. He was never going to be a good house husband. The two girls shared a laugh, at the irony of it all. I do plan on keeping him around, Kuroka said seriously. I don't know why, but I feel attached to him. I don't like not knowing why, though. Issei always had a strange ability to keep people interested in him. I never understood it either, but he was a good kid. Well, it was nice meeting you. It was good to meet you too. My name is Kuroka. Well, Kuroka, I am Mizore. I thank you once again for taking care of my son. Kuroka nodded, and with that, Issei came over. It was then Mizore's vitals began to drop, her life leaving her. And Mom? Issei asked louder than usual. Kuroka was next to him, so she could even hear whispers clearly, but this was not the scared toy that she knew. This was a scared child, who was losing a parent. She knew this feeling. She knew what it felt like to lose parents. Issei, we both knew she wasn't going to make it, Kuroka said, hugging Issei from the front. Look at me though, I can make this painless for her, okay? But I need your consent. Issei looked at his mother and looked back at Kuroka. With a tear, Issei nodded with great desire. Kuroka turned to Mizore and placed both palms onto Mizore. One on her forehead and the other over her heart. With a white glow around her palms, Issei noticed energy being manipulated inside of Mizore's body. It only took 5 seconds, but Kuroka was done. It was then the doors were finally broken down, and the eyes all around the room instantly vanished. Running in the room was the doctor from before and 2 others. The doctor from before looking at Issei and the girl. Why didn't you open the door? We were banging on it for a while. It was locked, Kuroka said easily. She was good at this. Damn it, we've lost her, said another doctor. The main doctor, the one from before, looked at Issei. You're her son, aren't you? Your picture is on the wall. You look quite close to it. Issei nodded. Kuroka looked at the doctor and shook her head. This isn't the same kid as the one on the picture. This one has been through much, he won't talk. I understand. Well, Issei, let me tell you this. Your mother was supposed to die a few months after being put into the hospital, but she kept herself alive with her will to see you again. She wanted to see you once more before she left this world. Your mother was a strong woman, and I can see that you are like her, strong. If you ever need anyone to talk to, give me a call. I am also a therapist, he said with a small smile. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. We done all we could for her. Issei nodded, though he put his hood up and walked away, leaving Kuroka behind. Kuroka noticed that his aura had went back to dull mode, but she also sensed the great sadness that entered into him. She frowned greatly and went to follow him, but when she passed the waiting room, she noticed one of those machines that have stuffed animals inside. She smiled and went over to Issei, taking him into a family bathroom. I need to stay behind for a while, please get some sleep, Kuroka said, sending Issei back using a magic circle. Kuroka turned around and went back into the waiting room, placing a yen coin into the slot. Issei went into Kuroka's bedroom and fell down onto the bed face first. It was from there he finally flipped over and fell asleep, his eyes even less empty from before, but his face showed no emotion. There was a great sadness in his eyes. He slowly began to fall asleep, his mind shutting down. It was 6 a.m. when Kuroka transported back into her bedroom, and under her arm was a large black cat. It was a very comfy and fluffy one. She slowly moved one of Issei's arms and placed the cat in between his arms, in which he unconsciously hugged it. She let out a big smile after seeing that, and she climbed into the bed, after closing the blinds completely so no light would ever enter. She had spent 3 hours at the machine, wasting hundreds of yen coins on the damn machine, but she finally got the cat for him. Kuroka had gotten him the cat as a gift, as she felt bad for him after losing his mother, and he wanted him to know that there was always going to be someone by his side from here on out. Cindergosa laid in her igloo and smiled. Maybe she's not such a bad cat after all, she said quietly before falling asleep as well. It was about noon when Kuroka began to awaken, so she only got about 5.5 hours of sleep, but she could take a cat nap later if she wanted to. As she woke up, the first thing she noticed was Issei placing a tray of food right on her lap, just as she opened her eyes. She blinked for a moment and looked up at Issei. He was holding the stuffed cat on his shoulder. As he placed the tray onto her lap, then he would hug the cat between both of his arms, as if afraid to let it go. She looked down at the plate, and she frowned at him. Issei, we went through this already. How many times do I have to tell you that you aren't a slave anymore? Issei shook his head no several times, visibly hugging the stuffed cat tighter. Kuroka had moved the tray aside to stand up to scold the boy, but she was frozen solid in shock when Issei hugged her, the cat in his right hand as he hugged her. She was frozen solid, her hands at her sides as he hugged her, tightly as well. This was the first time he ever hugged her or showed any type of love or adoration or showed that he liked someone or showed whatever a hug shows. After about a good 30 seconds, he released her and went back to hugging the fluffy cat stuffed animal. I wanted to, he whispered softly. What did you just say? Kuroka asked. She heard him, but she was shocked. He just spoke. Albeit so quietly, but he spoke, and to her. Issei, the boy who had tried to have with her 2 days ago, was talking to her and hugging her. He was opening up to her. He was a slave 2 days ago in mindset. I know I'm not a slave, but I wanted to make you something to eat as a thank you. So he speaks. I'm so happy. Issei didn't respond and just hugged onto the lifeline in his arms even harder. Kuroka gave him a big smile and sat down on the bed, padding next to her. He sat down quickly, no longer hesitating, and they both began to eat the breakfast. The breakfast was eaten in silence, but it was a happy and good silence. Kuroka had made a breakthrough with her treatment for Issei, finally getting him to speak to her. Finally getting emotions to come out of him. There wasn't a smile from him yet, but she knew that in time he would smile for her. Her ego was quite inflated with what happened with Issei, and she really loved the feeling when she got a hug from him. Issei stood up from the bed and grabbed a change of clothes from her drawers. After they came back from the mall, Kuroka gave Issei several of her dresser shelves, letting him have room for the clothes she picked out for him. She gave him a quizzical look at this, wondering what he was going to do. I'm going to go shower, Issei said, walking out with the stuffed cat and his clothes, all hugged against his. Kuroka watched him leave and sat on her bed for about 20 seconds before smiling. She also went to her dresser and got a new kimono, the same color as usual. She doesn't wear anything else, it seemed, only the kimono day in and day out. The pair didn't get to shower the day before, so it was a good time to shower now. Kuroka opened the bathroom door, and she could hear the shower running. Kuroka, while she did grow up in Japan, liked the Western showers better. She just enjoyed the shower over a bath most of the time, but she did have a Japanese furo just in case she wanted to soak. As she entered the bathroom, she quietly closed the door and undressed before climbing into the shower, without a care in the world that she was. Kuroka was quite the bold kitty. Issei turned his head slightly to look over his shoulder and only noticed it was Kuroka, so he continued to wash his body. He said nothing to the girl, nor was he shy about being in front of her, and made no attempt to hide his unmentionables. When she did finally get to see once the steam cleared, Kuroka made a very audible gasp as her sight fell upon his back. Issei felt her hands touch his back, in which he stopped cleaning himself and leaned against the front wall, his head against it as she traced his scars. What did those monsters do to you? Everything, Issei whispered. They would beat me daily. Belts, fists, feet, elbows, knees, small blades. They did everything they could to break me. I was starved constantly. I was also washed with a hose. Issei, you don't have to tell me these things, Kuroka said softly, still tracing his scars. She had a look of pity and worry on her face, completely shocked about what she saw on his back. When Issei didn't say anything, she gave him a frown, though she wasn't upset with him at all. It's like they marked your back to play a game. They did. They told me that I was their toy to do whatever they pleased, so they whipped me until I had a tic-tac-toe board on me, and they would use markers or whatnot to play on me as I laid in chains. Issei, I'm so sorry. It wasn't your fault. And I wanted to tell you these things anyway. It's alright, Issei said, turning around to face her. It was then she got a good lack as his. While it was masculine and very much shaped like a fighter, there were scars all along his, just randomly put everywhere. His back was purposely shaped like a game, but his was just hit randomly until marks showed up and it was hit some more. She looked up at him with pity. Issei was about 6'2" in comparison to her 5'3". He shook his head at her. I don't want you to look at me in pity anymore. Kuroka looked at his eyes. You didn't get any sleep at all, did you? She interrupted him. Issei shook his head. I woke up around 7 a.m. and I couldn't fall back asleep after seeing what you gave me, Issei replied. The cat was sitting on a bunch of towels on a rack, just waiting to be grabbed again. I gave you that cat because I wanted to let you know you aren't alone. I knew you were feeling all alone after you know. I was, but I spent all night trying to sort out my thoughts. After seeing my mother die before me and seeing how much you are caring for me, I am bringing myself to be more open. It seems quick, but sometimes you have to jump before you can crawl. That's not the saying at all. That was just awful, Naya, Kuroka said with a smile. I'm being serious. I spent all night getting the courage to talk again, and I'm still trying to find the courage to continue to talk. Life is short, Issei stated. Life is short, and after all you have done, I trust you, Issei said. Kuroka's eyes widened at the final words that he said. I trust you. What? She asked, shocked. Kuroka was shocked with many things. First was the fact that Issei said he trusted her. After one night, he was suddenly able to speak to her. Able to open up. He wasn't exactly emotional yet, but she knew that would be soon. Then there was the fact that she was being so serious lately. She is never this serious for this long. I trust you. It was you who gave me the paper that my mother was alive, wasn't it? Kuroka nodded. I knew I had to help you find your mother again after your dragon friend told me about her. If I knew my mother was still alive, I would have done anything to see her, one last time. And I thank you so much for letting me see my mother, Issei said, hugging her tightly once more. This time, Kuroka gave him a hug back, both of them squeezing tightly. I was glad to do it, Kuroka replied. I also thank you for giving me a reason to live again. The cat means more than you know. That was the idea, Naya, she said. Now I've had enough of this talk, she said, turning him around and grabbing a sponge. It's time to clean you up, Naya, she said happily and playfully. Without a word or any emotion, Issei stood in the shower as Kuroka began to clean him head to toe. In Issei's mind, Issei was standing in the middle of Antarctica. From there he stood right before Syndra. So, you have changed so suddenly? She said, pleased. I couldn't have done it without you both, and I know how short life is. I've died once before and I've been close to death so many times, but I don't think that I would have done this well without you both. Well, it was my Issei. While I still doubt this girl as a parental figure or a helpful figure, she has proven her worth to me. I guess mischievous cats kind of make me suspicious. I trust her. I know. I heard. I've been awake, listening to you both. She took care of me and she didn't have to. She let me see my mother again and gave me a gift. I know I was there, she said, as if stating the obvious. Issei had quieted down, as if in thought. Issei started but stopped. Syndra, however, wanted to know what was on his mind. What is it? Lassie fell in the well? I want to learn how to fight. Well, that is just about as shocking to hear as Lassie fell in the well. What brings on this change? Don't you already know how to fight? I mean, I want to learn how to use my powers. Why? This is really sudden. I want to be useful to her. I don't want to rely on her to protect me. Well, my powers are simple to use. It's ice. It has unlimited possibilities. The only limit is your imagination. That's all there is to it. Alright, time to go to sleep, Issei. I've been up too long, Syndra said, kicking him out of her mind house instantly. As he was brought back to the land of reality, Kuroka had finished up with cleaning her body, not even once asking him to clean her. She saw he was in thought, obviously. Kuroka smiled and looked at him, her black tail swishing happily. I need to go meet with a friend of mine, okay? I need to leave you for an hour or two. All right? Issei nodded silently and Kuroka smiled and got dressed quickly before leaving. Issei began to get dressed himself. Issei wandered around the house for a good 5 minutes before he stumbled upon 2 random men, though they were swordsmen who helped him that night, who were talking. Is it really true? The Chaos Brigade's magician's side is going to attack the 3 powers at once? I was shocked too. Apparently Kokobile was taken down after he caused a lot of trouble. Apparently, he wanted to cause a war, and he ended up hurting a bunch of devils. Like 2 devil masters and their peerages. Seriously? Yes, and it seems the vanishing dragon stepped in at the last minute. Who were the 2 devil masters? One was Rias Gremory and the other was Riser Phoenix. Apparently both are married now. Isn't Rias Gremory that ridiculously hot chick that we saved that kid from back in Kuh? Yeah, the one with the big boobs and crimson hair? Yup, she married some Phoenix devil. Huh, so an invasion, huh? I so wanna see it. Where is it taking place? So do I, but we got another job for us. I hate guard duty. But it's taking place at the high school in Kuh. Ugh, I know, right? Man. Issei left before he heard any more. He had to go see the invasion. He felt like going to see the red-haired girl again. Was it for revenge? He didn't know, but he had to go see her. Issei held his cat tighter and made his way out of the house, heading down to the bus station. The bus ride down to the train station was horrible. There was this one horribly smelling guy who just stank up the whole bus. Even worse, when Issei needed to use the restroom, that guy had turned it into Chernobyl. Issei ended up not using the restroom on the bus. Yes, Issei had to ride the bus about 2 hours down the road and he forgot to use the restroom back in the mansion. The bus ride was also quite bumpy and Issei hit his head a few times on the seat in front of him, since he didn't block with his arms cause he was hugging the kitty. Yes, Issei loved his kitty more than himself. So it took about 2 hours on the bus to the train station, and 15 hours on the train to Kuh, but Issei arrived safe and sound. Koruka had given him an allowance, and he spent it all on the train. Yes, he bought a private room on the train cause he had enough of smelly people near him. So he got a really good rest, despite missing being by Koruka's side in her bed. Yes, Issei liked Koruka a lot. She was the first person to show him any sort of kindness, and she took care of him. She got him to see his mother one last time and gave him a gift. He trusted her with his life. When Issei finally got into the main part of the town, the sun was beginning to set, and it was beautiful. He ended up going into his house and walking up to his bedroom, only to find that it pretty much stayed the same. His bed was still messy. So, while walking around with the stuffed cat in his arms, he looked around the entire house, trying to see if there was anything he could take with him later. Or maybe something his mother had left behind for him. He spent a good 30 minutes but gave up, heading towards the high school. The meeting was supposed to happen today, and he wanted to go check it out. He didn't really understand his reasoning or why his gut told him to go see what was going on, but he followed what it wanted. As he neared the school grounds, he could see that there was a magical barrier in place, which would have prevented any humans to see what was going on. Sindra told him that it was a barrier meant to ward people away from whatever was happening, but due to Issei having the dragon inside of him, it had no effect on him. Issei nodded and walked into the barrier, already looking around. As he entered the barrier, he noticed that there were hundreds of flying soldiers, some with devil wings, some with fallen angel wings, and some with white angel wings. The 3 great powers. Heaven's angels and the underworld's fallen angels and the devils. So the 2 twits were telling the truth about a meeting. As one who isn't exactly fond of these powers, I really don't want to be here, but I suppose learning what they are up to could prove useful for Koruka. That and acting like a spy sounds fun. I always wanted to act sneakily and eavesdrop. I could never do that as a big blue dragon. Well, let's go and take a look. Issei snuck into the school, somehow avoiding the soldiers from spotting him. They obviously weren't looking at the ground and only at each other. Issei could feel the hate and tension in the air. I'm sure you know this, but devils, fallen angels and angels never got along with each other. Long ago there was a 3-way war. No one won. I know, she told me. Issei thought, mentioning the woman who tortured him for a few years. Well, let's play spy. This sounds like fun. Issei nodded and made his way through the school, letting Sindra guide him with the use of detecting the abnormal powers and using them as a marker. When they got close, Issei peeked over the edge and saw that no one was guarding the large meeting room that was just down the hall. However, he began to hear the door behind him open, so he quickly bolted down the hallway to the meeting room, only to jump up to a nearby ventilation shaft. He pushed open the grate, and just as the footsteps neared the corner, he already cleared the shaft and closed the grate behind him. He looked down and spotted a woman with a maid's costume on. She had white hair. She is a very abnormally strong devil. Be careful. I sense ice powers on par with my own, but in your current state, you wouldn't last long. Issei nodded and crawled along the shaft, already hearing the voices. He heard multiple voices, including voices from the people who attacked him that one night. The red-haired girl was there. He could tell. He crawled along the shaft, and as he went over one more grate, he turned around suddenly because he had spotted the meeting. He was positioned now at floor level, along the wall farthest from the red-haired girl. He was closest to a white-haired boy and a man with black hair and golden bangs. As Issei sat there, it seemed the silver-haired boy turned around after a few seconds and looked into the grate, letting off a smirk before turning back to the meeting. He spotted you, Issei. That boy right there, no way, haha, that's Albion. Well, it's nice to see one of the few dragons that I got to know as friends, well, kind of friends. Issei said nothing and just listened in on the meeting. Kokabeel went rouge. Therefore my thoughts on the matter are irrelevant, the black-haired man said. So he acted on his own? The angel said. It was obvious because of the halo on his head. He never had my permission, if that is what you are asking. Issei was not interested at all and just sat like an Indian, petting his kitty softly as he listened. He was more of focusing on the red-haired girl. She was standing in front of a taller boy, one with blonde hair and a bad boy look. The red-haired girl had a collar on her neck, and Issei then saw the boy play with her hair. She looked very unhappy with him. Normal people couldn't tell, but Issei saw it. She was his slave, basically. That is what the collar meant. She was unhappy about it, and therefore she was not completely broken. Issei already hated this man. While he wasn't fond of Rias, he hated slavery. While it was fun in the bedroom for some, this was not a fun slavery. This was real perpetual slavery that just causes misery. Calm down, Issei. Don't get angry. You will reveal our position to the others. If you do, we can deal with the man later if you want to, but let's just focus on the meeting, okay? Issei nodded and just continued to pet the kitty. Let's just make peace and be done with it, the black-haired man said. Issei determined he was a fallen angel. With the positioning of where everyone sat, he could tell what they were. Everyone gasped. That is what we are here for, right? Of course it is. Issei lay back against the shaft, his eyes on the blonde, watching him interact with the red-haired girl, Rias Gremory. He also looked at the others who attacked him on that night, also noticing that they disliked the blonde. It was obvious this blondie was one that Issei would not like. Issei was beginning to finally feel emotions, but it was only hate. Anger, hate, fury. This was especially prevalent as he walked through his house and remembered what happened. It was then the dragon spoke. Are we going to do something about the spy we have here? The black-haired man smirked and looked back at the grate. Yes, I also wondered about the spy. And you neglected to mention him any earlier? The angel asked. Didn't really think much about it, oops. The black-haired man said with a mischievous grin. It seems we have a stray devil on our hands spying. Shall I take care of it? I would really like to face this dragon that is deciding to spy on us. Issei was already leaving the area, heading back up the shaft to the ceiling to leave. Ah, he's running away. How cute. The black-haired man said, laughing. xDoug looked at Rias. Do you suppose? I don't know, but why would he be here? Rias asked. xDoug shrugged. The angel and the fallen angel looked at xDoug and Rias. You know this spy? The angel asked. It is a possibility that this is the stray devil that Rias had attempted to kill last week. Why are we just standing here? Fine, Riser will handle this for you, Riser said, turning into a flame bird and crashing into the ceiling, raining fire and debris everywhere. It was then, after about 4 seconds of a bunch of crashing, Issei and Riser came crashing through the nearby wall across from the glass windows. Issei? Rias exclaimed, shocked at seeing him here. Issei was being held by the throat and was being carried outside the glass. As he exited the glass and went straight up into the air, he was forced to release the cat thanks to the lack of air. Issei watched with a closed eye as the kitty fell to the edge of the meeting room, teetering over the edge. It was also beginning to burn thanks to the fire. As Issei spotted the flame on his cat, his eyes grew wide as adrenaline and rage began to pump into his system. My cat, this he. Don't speak. Let us finally become one together, Issei, and let's fry this chicken. Issei was thrown to the ground and the impact created a crater. He looked up as he saw Riser in the air, surrounded by flames. Why is it you were not burned by the flames? Huh! Apparently I have to use my strongest flames to kill you. Die stray, Riser said, forming a massive fireball which scorched the air outside. It was then Syndra took over and summoned a massive ball of ice around issei, forming a cocoon. The fireball slammed into the ice cocoon and all that appeared was a massive amount of steam, covering the school field. When the steam cleared, the ice remained unharmed. What? How dare you little shit! Die coward! Riser said, throwing fireball after fireball at the ice. Vala, you said he was a dragon? Azazel asked. Yes, though he isn't the Red Dragon Emperor. No, that one would be Sindragosa. Michael and Azazel both looked at Surzex with shock. Yes, she lives inside that boy and Rias provoked him that night. He went off with another group of people. The Cows Brigade, Azazel said. It seems so, Surzex replied. It was then Rias bent down and picked up the black cat. What is this? He was carrying it the entire time, Azazel mentioned. I watched him drop it after being shoved outside. It also seemed when the cat turned on fire, the boy seemed to get enraged. Tell me something, who is this? This is Issei Hayato. So he is the one you mentioned to all of us in the beginning of the meeting? The slave? Azazel asked. Yes. It was then from the ice cocoon, two bright lights began to shine. It was like a hologram projector. Out of the ice cocoon, two pictures began to show, moving pictures. On the left was Syndra and her life in Antarctica with the penguins. The one on the right was Issei's life as a slave. Starting with the kidnapping. Everyone in the meeting room watched as they witnessed what Issei went through, all through his own memories and viewpoint. Even Riser decided to halt and watch the action. How horrific, Michael said. Who did this to him? It seemed a bunch of humans were contracted by Falbium's daughter, Hookie, to make him into the perfect slave. This poor child, Michael said. Is he a threat? Azazel asked. I do not know. He hasn't made an attempt to hurt us, it just seemed he wanted to spy on us. I don't know if he wants to hurt us or not, I can't say for sure with him, Surzex said. Down in the cocoon, Issei was in a massive amount of pain. Both of his hands were turning blue with frostbite, and it began to creep up his arm. While Issei showed no reaction or sign of being in pain, inside he was in scrutinizing pain. I know it hurts, but if you make it through this, you will become stronger than you can even imagine. You will have my powers at your disposal full force. Issei said nothing and just stood there, watching his fingers break like glass, and watch it creep up his arms. It was then his head turned blue and cracked, only to shatter as well. His body was shattering like ice. Back up in the meeting room, the white gauntlet appeared on Vala's arm. I advise you get that phoenix away from him. You decide to come out and speak now, Albion? What is it? Sindragosa, she was a dragon that was on par with Drang and I. She was not exactly the strongest dragon fighter, but the gods feared her more than they feared us. Her powers were so effective against creatures other than dragons, that they killed her because of it. Sindragosa was never a fighting type of dragon, preferring to babysit penguins down south, but still. If you want that phoenix to survive, you need to get him away quickly. In that cocoon of ice, Sindragosa's power is coursing through that boy's veins and it's getting stronger. When he comes out of it, the phoenix will be dead. It was then the cocoon shattered into pieces, and when the steam cleared, only Riser was out there in sight. Where did he go? Rias asked, no longer holding on to the cat. Kaneko was holding on to it, and she was no longer in the room. It was then a magic circle appeared behind everyone and out stepped a beautiful girl. Well, it seems our new teammate has decided to start the fun before we were ready. No matter, he wasn't causing any harm, the woman said. Katla, Surzex said with disdain. A huge explosion occurred and everyone looked outside. In the air, the soldiers began to disappear or die from explosions as magicians began to teleport into the field. An invasion. The Cows Brigade really does hate this meeting, Azazel said with a laugh. Vala? On it, Vala said. Balance breaker. Balance breaker. Before Vala could fly out though, Albion spoke out. Too late now. Rias looked outside and she watched as a statue of ice began to appear in the yard, only to shatter and for Issei to appear. So, a stray devil and a terrorist? This is Riser's lucky day. Riser laughed as he was covered in flames. Riser flew down right at him, charging right at him. Issei looked up at him and he turned into ice, his entire body looking like ice. His clothes were also made into ice. As Riser flew right at Issei, Issei put a hand up and grabbed onto Riser's head, stopping him dead on. Riser began to scream in pain as his flames were turned into steam almost instantly. Rias and Vala watched as Riser screamed for a few more seconds before they were silenced. Riser was a light blue, frozen solid. What? Rias asked, shocked. This is why I said the gods feared her more. She is able to freeze anything solid, including phoenixes. She was the anti-phoenix. She can freeze their regeneration abilities and make them useless. The phoenix is still alive, but if his head or his heart or both lungs were to be removed, he would be dead. Issei reached up with both hands and a hammer appeared in his hands. Not just any hammer. No, this was one of those comical hammers you see in cartoons. Stop. Hammer time, Sindragosa said. Issei slammed the hammer down, shattering Riser into a million pieces, killing the phoenix. It was then Issei began to slide on ice, skating across the field and into the bushes near the old school building. As Issei entered the bushes, he turned back to normal and began to weed through the thick brush. He entered a clearing, and that is when he saw them. Koruka and the white-haired girl that attacked him earlier. The white-haired girl was holding on to the kitty. Why are you here? For him actually, Naya. Though I am very happy to see you again, Chiron. How you doing, miss your big sis, Nyan? Kaneko turned around and saw Issei, who reached over and snatched the kitty away from Kaneko, walking over to Koruka and standing behind her, hugging onto the stuffed animal with both arms, like it was his lifeline. Why is he with you? Naya, I'm the one who is helping him, of course. He doesn't need your help. You are going to turn him evil. Naya, that's so rude, Chiron. Well, I have to go. I would love to stay and chat with you more, Chiron, but I came here for Issei. Koruka said, looking at Issei. You are in big trouble, young man, Naya. Leaving me without a word. It took me 12 hours to find you. Issei looked down, apologetically, as Koruka walked with him off somewhere. Issei and Koruka both arrived back at the mansion very shortly, thanks to the magic circle transportation. When they got back, Issei was still holding his head down apologetically to Koruka, who turned to him. After a few seconds of silence, Koruka began to laugh playfully, seeing Issei so worked up with her playful scolding. Naya, Issei, I was only playing around. Don't be so sorry. I wasn't angry, just a little worried. I'm sorry for worrying you. I don't even know why I went, Issei said, hugging onto his cat. He had snatched it away from Kaneko when he met up with Koruka. Naya, it's alright. I got to see my little sister, so it was worth going. Koruka said, her ears and tail out now. In public places near humans, she would keep them concealed, but when she was in her home, she always had her tail and ears out. Issei nodded and looked up at Koruka, before turning his head to the sound of transportation. It was a large shadow coming from the floor, and out from the floor came Vala and Biko. Naya, well, if it isn't our new member, Koruka said, giving Vala a wave. Yes, this one had gotten into quite a bind. He provoked Surzex and Michael. He still needs to learn there are limits. Whatever, wait, what is that boy doing here? Oh, this is Issei. He's been with us for like a week. He's Kuroka's pet, Biko said, giving Issei a grin. Issei didn't show any emotion and just stood behind Koruka now, using her as a shield. Naya, you know better than to see those things, Biko. It's been a while, Sindragosa. I'm surprised you are still alive. It has been a while, Albion. I didn't even know you guys died, considering I went first. So tell me, how has it been since our demise? I can't really complain, well, more so than I do anyways. I've found myself a partner who is and always will be the most powerful host I could ever inhabit. Yourself? This one is a first for me. I could have sworn I was completely destroyed, but I suppose it just took me a long time to arrive back in the world. I guess I don't really have anything to complain about, except that I miss my real body, but it has been interesting with Issei here. Ah yes, the boy who was a slave for most of his life. Use a bit more tact there, Albion. Humph, he will be fine. He should be a man and get over it. Albion, Sindragosa stated, like a mother scolding her child. Just because you mothered penguins doesn't mean you are my mother. You can act like it all you want, but it means nothing. I speak the truth. Issei, you need to man up and actually get over what happened. You've had enough time to mope. Ugh, for dragons, both you and the red one had such on you. I'm a man, Issei said very softly. Everyone could barely hear him. I'm with this cat, Issei said, mentioning Koruka. Koruka blinked and looked back at him, grinning. Naya, was that a joke? Did Issei actually make a joke? Issei turned back to his blank stare, but Koruka grinned even wider. Naya, you can't hide it. We all heard it, Issei. So, I'm yours, Nyan? Interesting, Koruka said, her tail swishing back and forth. I'm not entirely sure what I should do about this. I feel like cheering for his quick recovery from such a tragic past, but I feel like scolding him for such a bad and naughty joke. Vala sighed and rubbed his hair. So, Issei, I want to fight. Issei shook his head and hid behind Koruka again, not really acting as manly and bold as he was before. Naya, let him be, Vala. Don't cause trouble for him. I will fight him soon enough. I want to test him to see if he could be a challenge to me unlike the red one was. The red one this time around was just pathetically weak, Vala. He was just a normal German cop. You literally beat him in 2 hits. I would have to say Sindragosa here would be much better of a fight, but I say we let her grow with the boy. That way we could really enjoy ourselves. I actually like that idea. You hear that, Issei? Grow up and reach my level and let us fight it out. Issei said nothing and just stood behind Koruka, albeit he was taller than her. Biko chuckled and walked off, waving bye. We can discuss the plans for this new team later. I'm starving. Vala also left, not saying a word. He headed off to the library while Koruka and Issei stood in the main room before Koruka walked up the stairs to her bed. Issei followed like a lost puppy. Koruka undressed herself and grabbed a new kimono, and as she made her way to the bathroom, Issei sat on the bed. A new team? Issei asked softly. Naya, yes, it seems Vala has been given permission to be a separate and independent part of the Cow's Brigade. He has recruited Biko and I so far. I see, Issei said, almost sounding dejected. Koruka picked up on his diminishing mood aura and smiled. Naya, are you worried I'm going to leave you? No answer, but it was basically a confirmation. Don't be so sad, you are coming with. While it's not confirmed, I'm dragging you with me whether Vala likes it or not. Plus it's not like you wouldn't follow me. You are like a lost puppy, Nyan, Koruka said, teasing the boy. She felt confident in teasing Issei, seeing as he was able to talk and at least make one joke. She chuckled at his aura turning happier, so she disappeared into the bathroom, turning on the shower. Issei took a seat on the bed and stroked his little stuffed kitty as Sindragosa decided to speak with him. So, how are you doing there, Issei? I guess you are coming along nicely. It seemed I was right to have Koruka watch over you. I always liked her. You said just yesterday that you didn't trust her. I still don't trust her. I'm done with you. I like to see that you are getting a sense of humor, Issei. You are coming along very nicely, and I think you will be back to something like normal in no time. Just you wait. Issei and Koruka, sitting in a tree. K-I-S-S-I-N-G? K-I-S-S-I-N-G? What is that? At this point, Sindragosa ended all of her playful banter and was completely stunned. Wait, you don't know what a kiss is? No, why would I know what it is? All I know is how to, yeah. Oh geez, okay, maybe you aren't going to be normal. What is kissing? I will let you figure that one out on your own. I think it will be more amusing. Ha! I liked you better when you were helpful to me. Ah, come now, Issei. You know I care about you. I've tried to help you as much as I can, but I don't think I was the best at helping you. Got you? Okay, you little shit, Sindragosa started, but the bathroom door opened and Koruka stepped out dressed in the exact same type of kimono, just a clean one. Issei, I'm hungry, but I need to meet up with Vala and Biko. You wanna come get a bite to eat, said Koruka, despite knowing the answer. Naya, she said, making a joke. Issei nodded and stood up, walking being Koruka, who was grinning happily. She was very happy that Issei was improving from the mental state that he had just a week ago. It was shocking really, though Koruka did spend pretty much every waking moment with him, so she was able to help him every day constantly. So the rapid recovery wasn't entirely too shocking. Koruka entered the large dining room and was greeted by the sight of Vala in one chair, lazily laying back against it while Biko was doing the same, playing with his staff. Biko looked up at Koruka and gave her a flirty smile. Koruka responded with a smile of her own, but it wasn't exactly a flirtatious one, despite the fact that normally she would flirt with just about anything that walked. It was then Issei walked in behind her, and Vala raised a brow. "What is he doing here?" Vala asked, not in a really rude way, but in a curious way. "Naya, he's with me, of course. Did you really think that if I came with you he wasn't coming with?" "Naturally I assumed that only you and Biko was coming. I wasn't expecting him." "Well, that's what you get for being an emotionless asshole who only has thoughts of fighting on his mind, Nyan," Koruka said with a big smile. "It's not my fault I'm not a weak pansy like him, and he houses a dragon. What a pathetic existence. You know your arrogance will eventually lead to your downfall, Vala. You are not the strongest existence in this world, and you should recognize that with your attitude, you may end up pissing off the wrong person and getting yourself killed," Koruka said seriously, taking a seat next to Vala and across from Biko. "It will be a worthy death, fighting a stronger opponent. I seek that kind of ending. Alright guys, let's calm it down. There's no need for this tension. We just formed and we all got along earlier. Now Vala, I don't see a reason to not let the boy join. I've been here with him too. I don't mind him." "I didn't say I minded, I just said I don't see a point in it. You didn't seem like one to keep someone around for so long, Koruka. I can't fathom why you keep him around." Issei was silent during all this insulting, just hugging onto his cat and staring at the wooden table. "I honestly don't know why I am with him either well at first. But I grew to care for the boy. Even I care about things, Vala, even if you do not. I care only for my comrades and Albion. Weaklings are beneath me. Naya, he's joining our group or I'm not coming." Vala shrugged. "Fine. I never said he couldn't. I just said I didn't see a point. That being said, I will not be held responsible if something were to happen to him. It's not like you would be any good at protecting anyway. You got your ass kicked by the red-haired man," Issei said, still looking at the wood. "You had to have Biko here to save your ass and you call me pathetic." Everyone looked at Issei shocked, but then Biko started to laugh heartily, enjoying himself. "Well, look who has decided to open up a bit. Albeit it's in the form of a joke, but you opened up. Haha, I like this kid." "Naya, Issei, that wasn't very nice." "Bad boy," Koruka said with a laugh. Vala scoffed and rolled his eyes, ignoring the insult which had merit. "Whatever, so he can join. Can we eat now?" "Naya, I'm actually going to go out to eat with Issei. I'll see you two later." Vala just did a small wave with two fingers as the servers came out with food. Biko turned and grinned at Koruka and Issei. "Enjoy your date." "Ha!" About 10 minutes later, Issei and Koruka were entering a steakhouse, and were given seats in the corner, which had a lot more privacy. Koruka and Issei were both looking through their menus when the server came. "Drinks?" "We will both have just water with." "Thanks," Koruka said. Apparently her Naya was only used around the supernatural. "2 waters. Are we ready to order?" "Yes, we will both have the 10-ounce steak." "I will take it medium rare, he will have it medium," Koruka said, speaking for Issei. Issei was thinking ribs, but he let Koruka make the decision for him. 2 steaks, medium and medium rare." "All right. I will get right on it. You two look so cute together. Enjoy your date," the woman said, leaving with a smile. Issei had a look of confusion on his face, not exactly sure what a date was. He looked at Koruka, who seemed to be glowing for some reason. He tilted his head. "What's a date?" Issei asked. Koruka blinked and looked at Issei with a bit of confusion, before it dawned on her. This boy never learned what to do with a girl, besides screw her brains out. Koruka gave him a mischievous smile. "It's when a girl and a boy go out somewhere and spend time together. They like each other, of course." "Oh, so we are on a date?" I suppose in a sense." Koruka with a laugh. Issei looked around the restaurant as Koruka looked through the dessert menu, noticing that there were a bunch of other dates going on. He saw at least 3 of them, put their lips together, and when they pulled away, they looked happier. Issei looked at Kuroka for a moment before leaning over the table. Thinking Issei could be the ing Gravewalker. Whatcha think? Issei's lips gently touched those of Kuroka, who was wide-eyed and was frozen stiff by the sudden attack. Issei only kissed her for a second, but she was at least stunned with silence for 10 more. Issei, did you just kiss me? Why? That's a kiss? Wait, seriously? You don't even know what a kiss is? No, should I have? Why did you do that, Issei? I saw all the others do it, and they looked happy doing it. I thought I would make you happy by doing the same thing. Oh, Issei, a kiss is meant for couples. You don't do it when you are just friends. See those people, those are couples. As in they are together and dating. Aren't we together and dating? Issei asked, confused. No, Issei. When I said we were on a date, it was meant as a joke. Issei, dating someone requires two people to like each other more than friends. It's not something two friends do. We are just eating dinner together. Oh, I see. What is more than friends? I'm not really understanding the concept. It's love, Issei. Love. Love is what is more than friends. And you can't explain love. It's just something that comes natural. I can describe what it is like though. Well, I'm not understanding anything, but when I'm near you for some reason I get this feeling I don't get near anyone else. Not even my mother. My stomach gets queasy, my palms sweat a little, I get nervous, and when I mean queasy, it's like butterflies are flying around in my stomach and they can't get out. My heart races a lot when I'm near you. And for some reason, when I'm with you and we are with other people, I just want to impress you. It's why I made those jokes at Vala. Kuroka blinked and was frozen stiff. He was basically saying he was in love with her, and he has no idea what is going on. He looked like a puppy who just discovered he had a tail. She gave him a small smile as he had his head in his hands, completely confused. It's not all my knees go weak sometimes, and I don't want to leave your side, I want to be with you forever. I think I'm dying, Issei said, looking at her lost and confused. He has never smiled to her, but she can see that he cares for her more than he understands. He never got to experience love before, as he never went to high school where people learn all about this crap. She has seen rage from him and sadness, but she hasn't seen happiness from him. She knows he is happy near her, and he pretty much voiced it to her. She was ecstatic. Issei, what you just described, Kuroka said, leaning over the table. Is love, she said, closing the distance and kissing his lips gently, holding him by his shoulders as her lips melted with his own. It took him no time to respond to the kiss, and he leaned his head back and deepened the kiss. When they finally disconnected from such a kiss, Issei looked at her confused. So we are on a date now? I suppose so. This really has been the weirdest way I've ever hooked up with someone, Kuroka said, laughing now. Naya, haha. Issei, you have no idea what any of this means to you. No, but I feel happy, Issei said, giving her a very weak smile. You just smiled. Naya. I love it, Kuroka said, forgetting the fact she was in a public place for a moment, and kissed his lips sensually. He responded with just as much fervor. The waitress came over with a big smile. I knew you guys were such a cute couple. I love it. Well, here is your steaks. Please enjoy. I'll be back later, but I'm going to give you guys some privacy, she said, winking before leaving. Issei began to cut open his steak before putting his utensils down. He looked right at Kuroka and she looked back at him, confused. What's wrong? I don't understand any of this. What do you want explained first? What are we now? I don't exactly feel like we are anything different. I just know I feel happier now. Well, I suppose since we have been near each other for so long, it just feels natural. I mean, there are more physical things we could do now, like kissing and hugging. Oh, I like kissing, Issei said with a small smile. Everyone does, Kuroka said with a giggle. But I guess you can call us boyfriend and girlfriend now. So we are still friends? Of course. Just friends who are more intimate. Oh. Okay. So are you okay with this? With me kissing you? I did kiss you on my own volition, didn't I? Yes, Issei, I am more than satisfied with being your kitty, Kuroka said with a wink. Oh, cool, cause of the cats, I know you are definitely in the top 3. Kuroka blinked and looked at him. Top 3? Sure, there's my stuffed kitty, Kaneko, and you, but not in that order. Okay, but what's the order then? My stuffed kitty, Kaneko, and you. Oh, you're making a joke, Kuroka said, giving him a malicious grin. She flicked a bit of mashed potatoes on his nose, giving him the evil eye. I thought it was funny, but no, you are my favorite cat. I like you, Kuroka. Sorry, but you already hurt my feelings. You will be sleeping on the floor tonight, Kuroka said, being very nonchalant about it, not even breaking a sweat at this. But I was kidding, Kuroka. Please don't make me sleep on the floor. Kuroka just ate her dinner, ignoring Issei, who was panicking. She was acting completely serious and mad at him. Issei was also eating his dinner, but his hands were shaking and his eyes were filled with worry and concern. Kuroka was trying so hard not to smile. She figured if he was doing better enough to make such jokes to her, then he was able to take jokes as well. The dinner ended quietly, and as Kuroka left the parking lot and headed back up the mountain to the mansion, Issei was behind her. Please, Kuroka. I'm sorry. I won't joke around again. I didn't know you weren't able to take it. Kuroka ignored him and entered the mansion, heading up to her room for bedtime. They had already spent an hour after she said he was sleeping on the floor, and he was a wreck. He entered her bedroom, and without even looking at him, she was making the bed. He just sighed and gave up on trying to convince her, so he took a pillow and an extra blanket from the closet, making a makeshift bed on the floor. When Kuroka was settled in the sheets, she looked over at Issei and smirked. Issei, what are you doing? Sleeping on the floor, like you said? Come here, you can sleep on the bed now, okay? Kuroka said sweetly, her tail swishing back and forth. He got up slowly and made his way to the bed, testing the waters as he climbed in slowly. Seeing her eyes never leaving his, he just climbed in and snuggled into the sheets as well. She gave him a grin, a very malicious grin. I was only joking around. I can take a joke too, you know. What? You were only kidding? Why did you leave me so worried? It was fun, she said easily, her head propped up on her hand. Issei narrowed his eyes. Syndra was right, you are a bad kitty. Naya ha 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 ha. Kuroka laughed evilly, pulling Issei into her arms and hugging him from behind, spooning with him. Issei blinked and hugged his stuffed kitty in his arms, nuzzling himself into the soft, pillowy bosom of his girlfriend and the soft pillows below his head. It felt heavenly. This was new to Issei, but he was satisfied. He felt safe and happy in the arms of Kuroka, and while he had no clue on what he was supposed to do with a girlfriend, he wasn't worried. Kuroka was the greatest. Issei had woken up once the sun came out. The sun didn't come into the bedroom, but due to his slave past where he was always forced to be up at the crack of first light, he wakes up always at the same time. When he woke up, he immediately looked around his surroundings, as if scared that he was back in the hellhole of a cell he lived in for many years or back in the bedroom of Hookie. He realized he was in the bedroom of his girlfriend Kuroka, and a small smile crept on his face, and relief flooded his body. Happiness flowed through his veins as he sat up, remembering his current life. Issei was free. He was no longer a slave to anyone, and was able to think for himself. No longer would he have to suffer at the ends of evil beings, nor would he have to be subject to the perverted whims of his hated enemies. Issei was ecstatic inside despite his face being almost devoid of emotion, minus the very small smile on his lips, because he had a wonderful life now. He had a girlfriend, as she called it, and she would protect him. She made him so happy and treated him very nicely. At first he was reluctant to even trust her, but in the end Kuroka showed him that not everyone is out to hurt him. Kuroka may be a bad and naughty kitty, but she wasn't evil. Issei turned and looked down upon the sleeping form of his girlfriend, who was purring. She was obviously having a good dream. Issei smiled once more and crept out of bed silently, exiting the bedroom quiet as a mouse. Issei made his way down the stairs and to the kitchen, where he met up with another one of his best friends. The fridge. He got out a gallon of milk and a bowl of cereal before eating his meal in silence. His thoughts were on Kuroka and all of the things she had done for him. She had went above and beyond anything he would have thought she would do. She got him to see his mother again and gave him a black kitty stuffed animal. She had protected him from evil and told him she wouldn't leave his side. He finally had someone to stand beside, and he couldn't thank her enough for what she did. Issei's thoughts began to dwell upon these things, and his desire to pay her back increased by the minute. As he was deep in thought, He never noticed Biko entering the kitchen or grabbing his own bowl of cereal or Biko sitting down next to him. It was only when Biko called out Issei's name 3 times that got Issei's attention. Issei turned and looked at Biko silently, staring at him. "So, how are you and Kuroka doing?" "Good," Issei said quietly. Issei had his stuffed kitty on the table. "That's good, it's a surprise to see Kuroka so happy like this. She never had taken a boyfriend or kept anyone around this long. Actually, for as long as I knew her, she never had a boyfriend. She just had boy toys." Issei didn't say a word. "So, since she is keeping you around, you obviously mean a lot to her, so since me and her are such good friends, I say that we shall become good friends too." Again. Nothing from Issei. "Well, if you need help with your relationship with Kuroka, I would be glad to help. Friend to friend." Issei said nothing for a good 5 seconds before looking at Biko. "I want to pay Kuroka back for all she has done for me." "You do know she would never expect you to write?" Issei nodded. "I know, but I want to. She deserves it." "What does she desire most?" "Well now, it's you. Before I'd say it would involve her sister. They parted on not so good of terms, so there's that." "What happened between them?" "Well, depends on who you listen to. Kuroka says that her old master, since Kuroka is a devil, was an asshole. He would purposely force his servants to get stronger and stronger and stronger, through any means necessary. He loved power, and Kuroka had enormous power. He would forcefully bring out her power. However, the master was also interested in Kuroka's sister, and was determined to make her into his own servant and force her to bring out her power. So Kuroka killed him to protect her sister. Now, of course, the devils didn't know what the man was like, so they assumed Kuroka went rogue, and branded her a traitor and a stray. Fearing for their own lives, the higher-up devils wanted to execute Kuroka's sister due to her sister because they feared her sister going out of control like Kuroka did, which she didn't. So, Kuroka and her sister aren't on good terms due to a misunderstanding. I believe Kuroka said her sister was known as Chiron." Issei nodded and stood up, putting his dishes into the sink before heading towards the exit. Before he left, Issei turned to Biko and bowed his head. "Thank you." "No problem. I'll be here for you whenever you need me." Issei quickly wrote a note and placed it on the bedroom door on the inside and left the house about half an hour after his chat with Biko. Issei moved quickly into town and took a bus to the train station. He was going to do something for Kuroka, and he was determined to succeed. Issei was going to Ko. Issei arrived in Ko many hours later, and it was late. He was sure Kuroka was worried about him, but that didn't stop him from getting off the train and moving to Ko from Tokyo. It was dark when Issei arrived in Ko, and he was quickly making his way to the school. He didn't know where to look besides the school. Once he got through the gates, which were always closed, so he ended up climbing over a wall, he made his way to a building a little ways away from the school itself. It looked like an old school building. He decided using this building would be the best way to find the target. He approached a big pair of double doors and opened them, only for surprise to enter his blood. In the room was the devils, Rias and the others. Rias was at her desk having a conversation with the other devils, and she stopped mid-sentence when the creaky doors opened. "Issei? What are you doing here?" Rias asked calmly. Rias was no longer hostile towards Issei, knowing for one that his power was greater than her entire team combined, but the main reason was because he wasn't a bad person. He was just a man who is being haunted by his past. Issei held his stuffed kitty very tightly to his body, showing obvious nervousness, and honestly, everyone saw he was very scared to be here. He was very skittish looking with the way he was hugging onto the stuffed animal. "No one is going to hurt you here, you are safe here, hun," Akino said, giving him a small smile. His eyes scanned the room and his eyes landed upon the white-haired female, Kaneko. Or Chiron, as Biko said. "Issei? Are you all right? What do you need?" Rias asked sweetly. Issei slowly pointing out with his right hand while his left held the cat to his. He pointed towards Kaneko. Rias and everyone looked where he was pointing, and they all saw it was Kaneko. "What do you want with Kaneko?" Rias asked. Kaneko stood up and walked over towards Issei, who gripped the cat tightly in response. "I want to speak with her," Issei said quietly and slowly. Everyone heard the quiet voice of Issei, who was very scared of being here and uncomfortable as well. "I'll go," Kaneko said. All right, Rias said. Rias wasn't worried about Issei hurting Kaneko. He didn't seem to be one who wants to fight or hurt people. Kaneko walked in front of Issei and Issei followed, taking them both out of the old school building and towards the sports field of the school. They both sat on the soccer bleachers and Kaneko looked at Issei quietly. They both stared at each other in quiet, as Issei was unsure what to say. Luckily, Kaneko also had questions for Issei. Where did you get the stuffed cat? Your sister, Issei said very quietly, hugging onto the animal with both arms. Why are you with my sister? She is evil and will corrupt you. Issei violently shook his head left and right, obviously not happy with how she talks about Koruka. Koruka is not evil. She did all of this for me. She found me when I was lost and brought me out of my shell, Issei said quietly as tears began to fall from his eyes. Without your sister I wouldn't be here. She saw that I was hurt, and she healed me. She is a great woman and I'm proud to be her boyfriend. Boyfriend? You two are dating? That's right, Chiron, Naya, said a seductive voice. Kaneko and Issei both turned around and stared at Koruka, who was walking down the bleachers. Issei's eyes grew wider as Koruka had found him. He was going to be punished. He knew it. What are you doing here? Kaneko asked angrily. I came for my boyfriend, of course, Naya. He decided to leave the house after leaving only a note telling me he would be gone for the day. Knowing him the way I do, I knew he would be up to something and didn't want me to worry. Naturally, I worried for him, so I followed him, Naya, Koruka said with a smile as she approached Issei. Such a naughty boy, Naya, haha. I'm going to have to punish you for running away again, Issei, Koruka said with a very mischievous grin. Issei held his head down in apology. No. Don't you hurt him. I knew we're evil, but you are picking on him because of his past, Kaneko said angrily. Koruka was about to respond, but Issei stood up. She's not evil, Issei said loudly, closing his eyes as he yelled at Kaneko his thoughts. Koruka is a kind and lovely girl, and I wish I met her sooner. Without her, I would be nothing but a shell. I would have committed suicide, or I would have found someone who would put me back into my old life. Your sister is not evil, and you have no right to call her that when you don't even know the full truth of what happened between you two. I love your sister, Issei said, only for him to notice he was yelling this out loud. He didn't mean to say it out loud actually. Only in his mind. Koruka and Kaneko both blinked at the sudden change in Issei's demeanor. Koruka was the first to stop her surprise. She smiled and pulled Issei into her, smushing her against his own as he gave Issei a deep kiss. Issei responded to the kiss as Kaneko watched, staring at the interaction between her own sister and Issei. The cat who almost got her killed and the boy who was a slave. Koruka released Issei and smiled. I love you too, Naya. I'm glad that you can tell me this. It means you are coming out of your shell even more, Koruka said, nuzzling his with her own. Now let's go back. You have some explaining to do why you are here. Issei shook his head and didn't move from his spot when Koruka took his hand and began to walk away. Koruka looked back at him, wondering why he wasn't leaving. Issei was about to speak up, but Kaneko did instead. Why do you say it was a misunderstanding? Kaneko asked. Issei looked at her and gulped. The devils didn't know the real reason, Issei said quietly. Why your sister did what she did. They didn't do any looking into the devil's background. He was going to get you to use your power at such a young age, and you would have been driven mad, Issei said quietly. Your sister didn't want that, so she killed him, Issei said. Kaneko looked at Koruka, who was looking at Issei. How would you know that? Koruka asked seriously. I never told you my past. Because. Koruka narrowed her eyes dangerously. And how exactly did he find out? Koruka's eyes then went wide. That damn monkey, he's been looking into my journal, Koruka growled out angrily. Kaneko looked at Koruka and Issei. Is it true? Kaneko asked. Koruka smiled. Of course it was, Naya. Why would I hurt my dear Chiron for no reason? We were such close sisters. Kaneko looked away. I'm only trusting you because Issei does. He obviously knows the side of you I used to know. Naya. Are you saying you want to be my little sis again? Koruka asked, tail wagging. Koruka was teasing the obvious unsure Kaneko. Issei held Koruka's hand tighter, telling her to stop teasing. Kuroka isn't an evil girl, she's a bad kitty though she teases me a lot, but she's not evil. Please say yes, it would mean a lot to her. Kaneko sighed and nodded. Fine, she said, not looking at Kuroka. Only because Issei says so? Kaneko said. Naya, haha, I didn't expect this to happen when I came out here, but I'm glad it did. Well, I will see you around Chiron. Maybe it'll teach you how to use your hidden power better. Kuroka said, winking. CYA Naya, Kuroka said, disappearing with Issei in a magic circle. When Kuroka and Issei arrived back at the mansion, Kuroka and Issei walked inside. Kuroka looked at Issei as they walked in hand in hand. Why did you go there, Issei? Kuroka asked seriously. To give you a present. I wanted to do something for you like you did for me all these times. You idiot, you didn't have to do anything for me. I was more than happy to do these things for you. I wanted to, Issei said. He was no longer speaking quietly. He was able to be louder and himself around his girlfriend, but other people made him very nervous. Kuroka smiled and pulled Issei into a deep kiss, both of them hugging as they kissed each other. Get a room, you two. Sheesh, Biko said. Kuroka smirked and released Issei before running after Biko with a crazy look in her eye. Come back, Biko. Do tell me how you found out what happened between me and my sister. Ha ha. Don't leave your journal out for everyone to read then. You shouldn't have been in my room. Now get back here! Kuroka growled out as she chased him around the house. Issei watched the pair before heading to Kuroka's room for the night. Issei undressed to his boxers and climbed into the bed before falling asleep while hugging his dear stuffed black kitty to his. Issei was content. 4 months have passed since Issei and Kuroka had started officially dating. 4 months since Issei got Kuroka and Kaneko to make up. It's been 4 long months of peace and quiet for the pair. Kuroka and Issei had went with Vala many times for fighting, and they fought so many strong opponents. Well, Kuroka, Vala and Biko did. So did Arthur and Lefei, but Issei did not. He just watched. Except once where they were fighting a massive hydra. Biko and Vala kept cutting off the heads and made him from a 9-headed hydra to a 30-headed hydra. They wanted it super strong. Unfortunately, the super strong hydra made a comeback in the fight and whooped their butts in combat. The hydra had finally bitten Vala and was envenomized. Biko was as well. Arthur was unable to do anything due to the hydra having a massive food on his. Lefei's magic had no effect, unfortunately. It had come down to Kuroka alone against the hydra. Due to his beloved cat in mortal danger, Issei had stepped in and defeated the beast very quickly. He pulled out his ultimate form, Beyond Balance Breaker. It was like Juggernaut Drive, but there was no effects upon his life force at all. It just drained stamina, and Issei had a lot of it. He had to survive what he went through. Through his ultimate form, Issei froze the beast with a simple breath of ice before shattering it with a snap. Yes, with a quick breath of ice, the beast froze from the inside out, making it able to shatter like glass. So, Issei had fought once out of 20 different fights. The hydra was the latest fight, and the team had to take time off for their wounds. Biko and Vala had it the worst, but Arthur had his bones crushed as well. He needed some heavy repair. Kuroka and Lefei were uninjured, but Lefei was taking care of the wounded. Kuroka, however, being the awesome kitty she was, ignored the injured ones and focused on her relationship with Issei. Kuroka was never one to settle down before. She had many lovers before, but neither of them were long-term. She slept around, of course, but she wasn't too bad, and enjoyed it, but she never had a boyfriend. Issei was her first boyfriend. She honestly surprised herself and continues to do so every day, due to the fact she had settled down so easily with Issei. She has surprised herself also because she wasn't really the motherly type. She was the big sister, but only with Chiron/Kaneko. Perhaps it was like that with Issei. She didn't know, but she didn't mind. She did have a difficult time with keeping herself loyal to Issei. She wasn't upset she gave up her solo lifestyle, just surprised she was able to do it with ease. This all happened 2 weeks ago with the hydra. Vala and Biko were still in the sick bay as the venom from the hydra was extremely potent. While they were strong enough to avoid the lethality, it would keep them away from the battlefield for about a month. Most likely a month and a half. Don't with hydras. That is the lesson. Currently, the two lovebirds were snuggling together in the living room, watching a movie about idiots reviving the dinosaurs and making it into a theme park. Issei was so engrossed in the movie while Kuroka was just happy she was snuggling with Issei. Yes, Kuroka is a snuggler. Go figure. When the movie ended, Issei was smiling. He enjoyed himself. Issei had grown even more out of his shell around Kuroka, freely showing smiles to her and being pretty much a normal person. Around others he had improved as well, but not by much. He didn't hug the stuffed animal in a death hug anymore when he was scared or nervous, but he still walked around with it. It was weird watching a young man with a stuffed animal at a supermarket. Of course, this wasn't the only thing that drew attention. What also drew attention was the hot piece of ass standing next to him at all times. They were inseparable. She had garnered all of the male attention that ended up causing a spill in aisle 9 at one point. It was quite humorous. At the end of the flirting with Kuroka, Kuroka made a point to show the boys that she was with Issei by placing her around his right arm before placing a deep kiss on his lips, which he returned. All the boys glared at Issei for having such a beauty. Issei had also improved that he would smile around Vala, Biko, and the other members of this small part of the Cows Brigade. Issei did know about the terrorists, and he wasn't exactly fond of it. Of course, he never participated in any events of the Cows Brigade, and if any plans were made he would actually leave the area, so he would never know what they were planning. Issei just wanted to stay with Kuroka, which was why when the movie ended, he put on a serious face and faced the female. What is it, Naya? Do you think we should leave the Cows Brigade? Kuroka blinked at the sudden question and got off of Issei. Are you upset with us? Aren't we hated by everyone else? Issei asked, replying to her own question with his own. Yes, but so what? How are we going to make our own life if we are just going to be a hated group? You and I could never go anywhere, right? Are we just going to be terrorists for life? Kuroka frowned and kissed Issei on the forehead. Of course not, and life isn't bad now, is it? Issei shook his head and smiled. Of course not. I'm very happy with my life. I just don't want you to get hurt by our enemies. That's the real reason I'm asking. Kuroka purred and nuzzled Issei. I promise I won't get hurt, plus I got you to protect me. Issei nodded. Of course. Issei said, and they both leaned in for a kiss. However, Vala made an appearance. We just got word from Azazel. It looks like we are requested to defeat an evil god. Kuroka looked at Vala and rolled her eyes. We are so addition. You are still sick and injured. There is no way you can fight a god. That's what I told Azazel. Vala said bitterly. He responded by pointing out, we have your boyfriend to help out instead. Issei crossed his arms. I don't fight, Vala. I never did except that one time since you almost got Kuroka killed. You either help Azazel out, or Odin is going to die. I'd rather not see Odin die. It is of no concern of mine, Issei replied, acting like his word was final. It was then a nudge on his got him to look at Kuroka, who nuzzled his. I'd say you should help Azazel and defeat this evil god. But I don't wanna, Issei said, pouting at Kuroka. I don't wanna fight a god. The Hydra is one thing, but this is a god, Kuroka. Kuroka chuckled. You will be fine, Naya. Sindragosa and you are going to win. Issei looked at Vala. When do I start? Issei said, defeated. We head to the location with Azazel tomorrow to plan the attack. Whatever, Issei said, humping before crossing his arms and looking away. Vala rolled his eyes at the child while Kuroka licked Issei on his neck. Such a man, Naya, taking on a god for little old me. Humph. I'm very proud of you, Issei. You've come a long way since I met you. And it's all thanks to you. You have been a wonderful person to me, and I'm so glad to have met you. I'm glad to have met you too. Now let's go to bed, okay? We have to plan for our attack on Loki tomorrow. Issei nodded and Kuroka dragged him up the stairs. They both undressed to accept Issei, who was in his boxers, and cuddled with each other. Kuroka was being held from behind by Issei while Kuroka had her head on his, her ear against his heart. She fell asleep very quickly to the sound of Issei's heartbeat. The next day, Rias was infuriated. Why? Well, standing in the doorway of her clubroom was none other than Azazel and Vala. Why the hell are they here, Azazel? This is treason, Rias hissed. Azazel bowed his head. I'm sorry, but this was the only way to save Odin. I didn't have anyone else to call. They don't look to be in fighting condition, you stupid crow. That's why we brought the ice dragon, Vala said, moving out of the way to let Koruka and Issei in. Rias gasped and stared at Issei. Are you saying Issei will be the one helping us? Issei nodded to her question. Koruka asked me nicely to do it, so I will help you defeat Loki. When do we strike? In 4 days, Azazel said. At the mention of this, Issei grew visibly depressed for 2 seconds before reverting back to normal. Everyone saw that but said nothing, though Koruka grabbed his hand and squeezed gently, which was asking him what's the matter. Issei squeezed back and reassured her that he was okay. Koruka didn't reply and just left it alone. Azazel coughed and pulled out a large black board out of nowhere before planning the attack. 4 days later, the attack on Odin began. Loki appeared and summoned Fenrir and his 2 sons, Skoll and Hati. Greetings. I am the evil god Loki and I am here to play. It looks like you brought friends, old man. Well, I think it's time for them to learn what happens when they stick their nose in our business and vice versa. Ahaha. Now, my wonderful son, go and play to your heart's content. You too, my adorable grandchildren. Loki replied, which the 3 dogs zoomed off. During the time between Issei's arrival at the clubroom and the attack, Issei and Koruka had taken up residence in a bedroom within the clubroom. It was really Koruka who stole the room away from the others, but the others didn't mind too much. Issei and Koruka had been very lovey-dovey around Rias and them, which wasn't exactly taken too well. I mean, they were just uncomfortable seeing such a damaged boy with the terrorists. It wasn't right. But the 2 lovebirds didn't mind. Koruka had also connected with her sister more and began to teach her senjutsu. Issei had stayed and watched the 2 interact, just sitting there and watching while hugging into the stuffed cat. It was very fortunate the stuffed animal was built with sturdy yet comfy materials, because it has seen its fair share of abuse. It burned and it's also death-hugged. Issei also had conversations with Rias and the others, all about how he was doing. He told them he was recovering very nicely and it was all thanks to Koruka. He told them that Koruka wasn't that bad of a person. Just sometimes a pain in the butt to deal with. Even for him. But he loved her with all his heart, and they accepted that. They had eventually accepted that Issei wasn't truly a terrorist, but a boy in love. Back to the fight at hand. Issei was very unhappy. He really didn't want to fight, especially today. Today was a special day to him, and this fight was ruining it. He had gotten a lot of courage to do something special for the day, but no, he had to fight a god. He was getting the courage to do something for weeks now. He was very unhappy. Issei walked towards Loki alone and looked up at the god with a very unhappy face. Not angry unhappy but depressed. Well, who might you be, boy? Do you challenge me? Can you please stop the attack? Come back another day? Issei asked nicely. Haha, bargaining for Odin. No, sorry, dear boy. I have too much at stake to not kill my father. He had decided to ignore my warning and continued to sully our life with other religions. It will not stand, so he must die. Can you do it another day then? I have other things to do. Sorry, kid, but those plans are ruined, not that it matters. You will be dead anyway. Loki laughed out maniacally before shooting a humongous ball of Norse magic at Issei. Issei used his ice powers and slid away from sighing. Fine. I asked you nicely, so I guess the only way to do this is to fight you. If I defeat you fast enough, I can do something with Koruka. Issei yelled out loud, which distracted Koruka from her task. She heard Issei all this time, but when he said he wanted to do something with her, she got very excited. She had noticed he was deep in thought for the past few weeks, but whenever she brought it up, he would avoid the question with master skill. Koruka sighed like a teenage girl who was in love. Pay attention, sister, Kaneko said, scolding her sister. Koruka shook her head and focused on the fight. After Issei's chant, Issei was finally in his super form. It took about 10 minutes, but Issei had beaten Loki, and Loki was frozen in a block of ice. The other wolves were also frozen minus Fenrir, who was taken hostage by Vali and the others. Issei didn't care. After the fight, Odin had personally thanked Issei for his help and offered to do something for Issei in the future should Issei need something. Issei nodded his head and said it wasn't a big deal to him. Issei turned to Koruka after Odin left in a magic circle and gave her a hug and a kiss. Happy 4-month anniversary. Issei said with a big smile. Kuroka blushed at what he said. You remember? How could I not? This was 4 months to the day that I met you for the first time. I love you, Kuroka, Issei said. Kuroka smiled. I love you too. They both shared a deep kiss and disappeared to go back home together. Issei had forcefully dragged Kuroka up to her bedroom before pushing her in gently. He then closed the door behind him. 10 years have passed since Issei had first met Kuroka. 10 years since he got his first girlfriend. 10 years since Issei had escaped from his past as a slave to a female. During these 10 years, Issei had grown up to be a very important young man in the world. He had achieved many victories against the terrorists, the Chaos Brigade. He was turned into the enforcer of the 3 biblical powers, the Norse, the Greek and the Japanese. He was deployed to kill anyone trying to start a war or trying to cause a collapse of one of these powers. Issei had no regrets about killing, but can you expect him to have what he suffered? He had gotten along with Rias and the crew during his 10 years and actually made friends with them where he was able to be normal like he was with Kuroka way back then. He had gotten Kuroka and Kaneko to become close sisters again, which made Issei very happy. He had beaten Vala in combat after a year of being with Kuroka as well. Vala was defeated when both were in their final forms. Issei had won with a well-timed freeze on his feet before bashing him with a giant ice block. Issei and Kuroka had left the terrorists a few months after defeating Loki, becoming an anti-terrorist group with Rias and the other members of the ORC. Issei had begun to work with the devils, fallen angels and angels to get Kuroka free from the warrant of her death. When she killed the Devil Master and the pursuit squad, she had a hit put out on her as one of the top 10 people that was needed to be destroyed. After 2 months of bending over backwards, he had convinced all 3 factions to free her. Kuroka of course loved him even more for his devotion to her. When the group known as DXD, which was Rias and her group, Vala's group which included Kuroka and Issei, Azazel, Sun Wukong, and Dulio, defeated the Chaos Brigade, Kuroka and Issei had disbanded from the group and got a house in the mountains near Ko. They went there to get away from everyone and begin a family. It was currently a cold January night, and the 2 lovebirds were currently snuggling by the roaring fire, while they watched their 3 children run around. They had 2 girls and 1 boy. One girl had short white hair and cat ears with bright green. The other girl had long black hair which grew to her waist and bright topaz. The boy had short brown hair, chocolate eyes, and they all had car ears and tails. The 2 girls were 3 while the boy was 4. Issei kissed his lover's neck and held her closer. His stuffed cat was being snuggled by the white-haired little girl who was quieter than the others. She was also the youngest of the 3, though the black-haired girl was only older by 2 months. They both watched their children with happiness on their faces, but only for a moment because Kuroka had just pinned her lover on the couch while straddling his waist. Issei looked up at his beautiful wife and smiled. Naya, I want a divorce. Oh cool. I had a hard time bringing up the conversation, Issei said without missing a defeat. Naya, you are no fun. You were supposed to ask why in such an emotional voice. Oh sorry. Let me try again. What Kuroka, what did I do? I know I haven't been the best lover, but I'm trying. Please don't leave me. Please don't, Issei said, begging her to stay. Naya, haha, Kuroka said, leaning down and kissing his lips deeply. You are a great lover and you should not forget that, Naya. I would never leave you. Good. 'Cause I would never leave you. Of course you wouldn't. You couldn't find anyone like me anyway, Naya. There is a white-haired Nikomata I know of. Kuroka flicked his forehead a bit harshly. No. Bad Issei. Naya, haha. Issei grinned and kissed his lover once more before looking over at his children. The white-haired girl was known as Azula, the black-haired female was known as Shizuka, and the boy was called Ichika. They both cuddled together on the couch as they watched the 3 play a card game together. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the xDoug-Dimmadome-x for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.